Mr. Agan,
Present.
Ms. Conley,
Here.
Ms. Downs,
Here.
Ms. Flynn,
Here.
Mr. Snyder,
Here.
Ms. Underhill,
Here.
and Mayor Hardy.
Here.
Thank you, Council.
If I could ask everyone to rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May I have a motion to adopt tonight's meeting agenda, please?
I move to adopt the agenda.
We have a second.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Meeting agenda is adopted. Well, we have a special night today. We have 3 special proclamations and presentations. And first up is one of the things that's our annual favorites is the Chet DeLong Award for Outstanding Service to the Library. So welcome to members of the Library Board as well as the Library Director to come join us.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor Downs, and members of council. Good evening. My name is Andrew Painter. I am the Vice Chair of the Mary Riley Stiles Public Library Foundation. And on behalf of our foundation, it is a pleasure to be here this evening to present this year's Chet DeLong Award for Outstanding Service to the library. I am joined by Amy Morgan, our board chair, as well as our library director, Megan Dotzler, as well as Lucila Hernandez Posada, who is this year's recipient. This is an award that is given annually to a library volunteer or an employee that represents the civic efforts of Chet DeLong, who served on the Library Board of Trustees for more than 25 years. Chet volunteered more than 300 hours every year to the library. He advocated for the library renovations, including through the 2016 bond referendum, and he helped establish this library foundation. This foundation was established about 27 years ago. It was founded by Chet and his wife Carol around their kitchen table. Former Vice Chair Don Camp was there too, stuffing envelopes and getting the foundation off and running. And today the foundation has an endowment approaching $750,000. And we would, of course, urge everyone to support the foundation so that we can continue to support the library for many years to come. When we looked at the nominees for this year's recipient, we as a board stepped back and thought more broadly about the library's overall function and how it contributes to a sense of community, because it's not just a static building full of books with the doors open. There is so much more that the library does. It's about the connections that have been made with the people that come into the library, the people that work at the library, the forging of those relationships, and to provide knowledge to everyone that is accessible to everyone. And all of these things translate into people. Libraries are very people-heavy. You must have people, employees, and volunteers to staff the services. And tonight we are honored to recognize someone whose work is essential to the success of our library, even though it happens often quietly and behind the scenes. Our library is a place of learning and discovery and community, but none of that can happen unless the space itself is clean, safe, welcoming, and cared for. And that responsibility falls day after day to our library custodian, Lucila Hernandez Posada, who is our recipient tonight. She has been a loyal and exemplary employee of the library for 15 years. She takes tremendous pride in her work. She shows genuine care for both the library and everyone who walks through its doors. She arrives very early every weekday morning, often before the break of dawn, to ensure that the building is spotless and welcome to the community, and that is every single day. Because she starts her workday so early, much of what she does goes unseen or unnoticed, but the value of her work cannot be overstated. From impeccably maintained restrooms to spotless reading areas, Lucila ensures that every space in the library is visually inviting, clean, hygienic, and safe. And thanks to her efforts, the library has received numerous compliments from patrons and staff alike about the cleanliness and welcoming atmosphere of the building. It is her reliability, her positive attitude, and behind-the-scenes contribution that are a vital part of what makes our library a special place that people want to return to again and again. She's also willing to help in and lend a hand beyond her regular duties. In one recent example, she volunteered to set up for a special early morning program when several of our library staff members were delayed by bad weather. Her readiness helped to ensure that the event was able to begin on time. But as meaningful as her work is, what stands out to those who know her as a colleague is that she is positive, friendly, flexible, genuinely hospitable, thoughtful, helpful, and a true pleasure to work alongside. She treats the library not just as a workplace, but as a community space deserving of care and respect. and that dedication reflects the very best of public service. Her dependability and diligence embody the spirit of dedication and public service that the Chet DeLong Award was created to recognize. And so it is our great pleasure to present the 2025 Chet DeLong Award to Lucinda Hernandez Posada. And I would invite her to say a few words if she'd like to.
Thank you so much.
If you want to come up here.
Vicky?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much, everybody, for the support, and thank you. Okay.
If we would like to come up for a photo, we'd like to congratulate you in person.
Okay.
And if you'd like to invite any members of your family, please join us as well.
Star do it first.
Thank you for also sharing that kind of lovely tribute to Lucilda and all of her work. I think that kind of quiet dedication and pride and kindness is what makes the library so welcoming for every student, every neighbor that comes in. And so thank you for everyone who put so much heart and effort into making the library a great place for our community. Any other members of council wish to make comments? Ms. Connolly?
I just want to say congratulations and thank you for the work that you do. The library is such a welcoming place, and it's really important to the whole community that it's a place where everyone feels comfortable. Thank you for your work to make that happen. I wish I could say that in Spanish. I'm sorry.
Great. Up next is our presentation declaring January 9th as Law Enforcement Appreciation Day. Mr. Snyder will do the honors. And welcome to all of the members of our public safety team.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I know this is titled as One Day of Appreciation, but the reality is we appreciate local law enforcement 365 days. So I want to thank you for what you do. So here's the proclamation. Whereas the Falls Church community depends on police officers and sheriff's deputies as guardians of public safety and to serve the community with dedication, integrity, and professionalism, often placing their own lives at risk to protect and serve. And whereas National Law Enforcement Appreciation Day provides an opportunity for members of our community to acknowledge and honor the service and sacrifice of law enforcement officers who uphold the rule of law, ensure public safety, and maintain peace. And whereas officers and deputies work tirelessly, often in challenging and unpredictable circumstances, to respond to emergencies, prevent crime, and safeguard the rights and freedoms that are the cornerstone of our democracy. And whereas the courage, commitment, and selflessness demonstrated by law enforcement officers deserve profound gratitude and recognition. And whereas the support of the community is essential to the success of policing, and fostering a relationship of mutual trust and respect enhances the well-being and security of every member of the community. And whereas on this day and throughout the year, we encourage the community to express their appreciation for the contributions and dedication of officers and deputies and for the sacrifices made by their families.
Now therefore, I, Letty Hardy, Mayor of the City of Falls Church, Virginia, do hereby proclaim January 9th, 2026 as Law Enforcement Appreciation Day in the City of Falls Church, and ask all residents to observe this occasion by showing their appreciation for Falls Church police officers and sheriff's deputies with appropriate in-person appreciations, thank you notes or cards, or using social media platforms to publicly thank our officers and deputies for their dedication and commitment. We'd welcome Chief Fard, as well as Sheriff Kay, to come join us, say a few words.
Good evening, everyone. I just simply want to say we appreciate the recognition and we're proud to serve the City of Falls Church. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Council, for that proclamation. Councilman Snyder for reading it. As you're absolutely right. It is not just one day. It's all the time. And this community is just so wonderful for showing their support all the time as well. Last week, there was a lot of people that showed up at the police department and dropped off goodies and showed their appreciation. I had a lot of text messages from people in the community. And, you know, it's fitting that our officers are wearing their mourning bands on our badges to honor a fallen officer across the river in D.C. Police that was struck by a car. We never lose sight of the dangers of this profession. So just truly appreciate this. It means a lot more than you think. So I know the officers who are here, they're working tonight, and as they stay up all night tonight and patrol our streets while we go home and go to bed, they really do appreciate this. So thank you very much.
We could invite you all to come up here and receive the proclamation.
They're shy.
Come on up. Just a brief comment. Chief Fard, I think all the accolades and text notes and treats that you all got weren't probably by accident. I think it's because you guys have earned it through kind of listening, being present. I think that appreciation and gratitude is genuine. So thank you. This community is lucky to have such a great public safety team. Anything else? Justine? Ms. Underhill?
Well, I guess they left the room, but I will say, a few quick words, which is there's a lot of visible work that police do and our public safety team do, but there's also a lot of invisible work. And so I wanted to thank them for all of the work day in and day out. Public safety works best when it's rooted in professionalism, accountability, and respect. And we really appreciate everything you do by imbuing those values in our community. And we'll get this. Oh, there's Chief Fard. Okay, so actually, I did want to specifically say thank you to Chief Fard. You have been more involved in this community, hosting activities, meeting with residents, more than any other community that I've been involved in. So I truly want to thank you for that. There were some lines from Andrew Painter earlier who talked about the importance of forging relationships and community, and that is something that you imbue and value every single day. So thank you for that.
Mr. Snyder?
Thank you. The importance of effective policing relies upon the community's support and appreciation. And local law enforcement in particular has the ability to create that community trust. And I believe our law enforcement has done that and will continue to do that in the future, just as our community will continue to express appreciation and outreach to them in terms of supporting what they do. But this is a special recognition for local law enforcement. I want to make that point very clear. Thank you.
Ms. Downs?
Yes, thank you, Chief Bard. You are such an approachable, warm person, and I think that really serves an example to your whole team. And I've never, ever heard a bad word spoken about you and your team. I mean, people are just so grateful for all of the service and the ensuring safety and things that are unglamorous like traffic control. I know you know that the schools love having the school resource officers. There's just so much that we are grateful for you and your team. And again, I just thank you for your leadership. And I think it really trickles down when there's great leadership and empathetic leadership. I think that clearly is demonstrated by you and your team. So thank you so much.
Anyone else? Great. Thank you again. So our final proclamation is declaring January 19th as City of Falls Church Day of Service, and Vice Mayor Downs will do the honors.
Thank you, Mayor Hardy. Whereas the City of Falls Church is a welcoming and respectful place for people of all faiths, all races, all cultures, all sexual orientations, and all backgrounds. And whereas the City Council wishes to reaffirm the long-standing community values of equality, inclusion, and diversity, and amplify efforts to support those values. And whereas in numerous proclamations in support of fair housing, disability rights, immigrant rights, and the rights of the LGBTQ community, the City Council has always taken a strong stand in opposition to discrimination against anyone. And whereas the City Council encourages positive action to combat intolerance. And whereas on January 20th, 2026, we honor Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. for leading the civil rights movement in this country. Whereas on January 20, 2026, we honor Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. for leading the civil rights movement in this country until his death by assassination in 1968 to advance civil rights for people of color in the United States through nonviolence and civil disobedience. And whereas Dr. King said, life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? And each year on the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday, Americans across the country answer that question by coming together to serve their neighbors and communities. And whereas service to others is a hallmark of the American character and central to how Falls Church meets the challenges faced by the city, the Commonwealth, and the nation. And whereas the Falls Church City Council believes that ordinary citizens armed with compassion and the willingness to serve can come together to change the world and pursue the nation's highest ideals.
Now, therefore, I, Letty Hardy, Mayor of the City of Falls Church, Virginia, do hereby recognize Martin Luther King Jr. holiday on January 19th, 2026 as the City of Falls Church Day of Service, and encourage all citizens to observe this day with appropriate civic, community, and service projects in honor of Dr. King and affirm our city's commitment to the values of equality, inclusion, and diversity. So we'd welcome anyone in the audience who would like to help receive the proclamation.
We actually have Ed Henderson, Becky Tinner-Stotts, and Velma Tinner, who'd like to speak about the MLK Day festivities. Did you want to wait till public comment, or did you want to speak now? Is that
Welcome you now.
Yeah.
And I apologize, the written version of the proclamation had the wrong date. It is January 19th.
I apologize for that.
No, it's no
typo.
problem. As I was reading it, I'm like, is that the right date?
We'll fix that. Thank you.
Welcome, Mr. Henderson.
Thank you, and I may be a little bit long on this, but please bear me some grace. Falls Church has a social justice legacy of its own, going back to the things that Tinner Hill has been championing for almost 30 years now. But Martin Luther King Day 2026. In the spirit of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., it is our duty to speak out against injustice in our nation. When you see something, it is imperative that you say something and, if possible, do something. I was watching Rachel Maddow the other night when she was interviewing Japanese internment camp survivors and their descendants and how they protested in Los Angeles just recently when the ICE raids took place to grab immigrants from Central America. They were very active in their protests, basically reminding people never again. But I also thought about how, at that time in our country's history, they did not resist. No one came to protest their removal. And it occurred to me that what the civil rights movement gave birth to in our nation was an era of social protest where people felt it was okay and necessary to resist and advocate for social justice in America. The first year we had the March for Justice and Freedom in 2017 was the first year after Donald Trump was first elected. There were several hundred people who joined us. We need that kind of outcome again. However, it would be confusing to advertise it as a No Kings rally since we're actually celebrating Dr. King. But still, mobilizing bodies and taking to the streets is what we need to bring attention and to make a statement. So, on Monday, January 19th, 2026, the Tinner Hill Heritage Foundation March for Unity and Freedom on Martin Luther King Day and our program at the Falls Church entitled Mission Possible, Building Community and Uniting the Nation the Nonviolent Way in the city of Falls Church is the only commemoration program to recognize the person and the work and the memory of Dr. Martin Luther King. We have a number of give days and in honor of, but this is the only one that commemorates him directly and in truth. We march in the spirit of Dr. Martin Luther King. We invite the people of Falls Church, civic organizations such as CBC, Democracy Falls Church Indivisible, and parents and students in our schools. We will also be joined by people from Nova Parks, including their new director, our partners with the Tinner Hill Historic Site, Nova Parks, and members of the Fairfax County branch of the NAACP. So we hope that I think that we'll have, looking forward to having a banner year as we march down Robert E. Lee Highway to the Falls Church.
And just to share a little of the agenda that will, or the itinerary for the day, the attendees will gather at the Tinner Hill Arch starting at 10 a.m. We'll have short speeches of Dr. King to be played as we gather and make signs for the march. And then at 11 o'clock, there will be an invocation, a welcome from our mayor, Letty Hardy. Then a few short speeches by elected officials will speak, a short history of the Martin Luther King Day March in Falls Church, and possibly the first 250th anniversary committee's first soapbox presentation. We'll be working with Jim Cole about that, and we can hopefully pull it together. We will then march up South Washington Street, part of which was taken from the family of the Henderson family by eminent domain in 1922. When we reach the Falls Church, lunch will be served for the participants, and then after lunch at 12 p.m., there will be a program in the Falls Church. The Falls Church Episcopal program includes singing, Lift Every Voice and Sing, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. commemorations, and then a keynote speaker, which will be Reverend Henry, the pastor of Doolin United Methodist Church. We'll also include a workshop breakout session on the topic from the Tenor Hill Social Justice Committee, and also singing. We'll ask everyone to be included in the singing, We Shall Overcome. So again, as Mr. Henderson mentioned, we hope that we'll be able to have everyone in attendance that was mentioned earlier. Thank you for your attention.
And I hope I'm not presumptuous in asking you to say some comments as a welcome.
I'd be honored to. Thank you.
Okay,
For the
thank you.
invitation.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think one of the quotes I liked most from Dr. King is about, I think, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And so I think that really speaks to me today when there is so much news about injustice in the world. And so thank you to the Tenor Hill Heritage Foundation and the Social Justice Committee for continuing to keep up the tradition of showing how democracy should work in Falls Church and the importance of speaking up, now more important than ever. So we look forward to joining you. And we, again, per the proclamation, encourage everyone in the community to join in the day of service, whether it is next Monday, whether it's joining in the march, or some other way of kind of showing your civic pride and the importance of coming together and representing the ideals of Dr. King.
Do you want to present the proclamation?
Yeah, would you like to come up and receive the proclamation? Yeah, we'd welcome you to come up if you'd like. And other members of Tenor Hill or the Social Justice Committee as well. We're sorry, there are a lot of bugs around. We appreciate you masking up. Any final comments from council before we move on? Okay, up next we have oaths of office to new board and commission members. Do we have anyone in the audience here to receive an oath tonight?
I don't believe so. Thank you.
Okay, well, let's move on to receipt of public comment. Could you start with a summary of written comments, please, Madam Clerk?
I certainly can. Let's get there. Since your last regular meeting last year, Sarah Cotter, representative to the Community Services Board, provided the board's service utilization report for FY 2025. Kathleen and Gordon Limbaugh wrote regarding maintenance of the WNOD after snow events. And Danny Polinsky wrote to request that the city consider removing rideshare pickups on major through streets like Broad, Washington, and West.
Great. Do we have public comment either live or virtually tonight?
We do. We have Ted Ling, followed by Elizabeth Cunningham.
Welcome.
Thank you. So slow.
So I'm very pleased to be here. I'm Ted Ling. I've lived in the city for many years. I'm pleased to be here on law enforcement presentation night. In Falls Church, we're very blessed to have a skilled and dedicated police force that respects citizens' rights, and it's really nice to be here tonight. However, I think the recent murder of Nicole Good should remind us that in many places in the country, that are currently under attack by federal agents. It's also becoming increasingly clear that local governments will need to play a large role and maybe even take the lead in standing up to the regime. So with all that in mind, shouldn't it be possible that Falls Church follow the lead of California and to some extent Arlington and bar all cooperation between the city police and ICE, CBP, Park Police, and every other federal agent. Now, let me quickly add, there would need to be provision for exceptions, of course. For example, if the FBI were investigating child pornography in the city, of course we would want our police to cooperate. However, this cooperation should be rare and never be routine under the current regime. I have read the general order that governs this issue in the city. It leans in the right direction. It says that police are not responsible for immigration enforcement, but it does not go far enough. It does nothing to bar cooperation with federal agencies. In addition, in this solid blue city, shouldn't it be possible to make an explicit commitment that the local police will intervene and investigate any federal agents that commit unlawful abductions and assaults within the city? In the past, I think it's fair to say the city has been cautious on issues like this, and that is perfectly understandable. Personally, I'm a little disappointed we were never a sanctuary city, but in general, it makes perfect sense to let the state and the federal government take care of issues like this in normal times. But we are not in normal times. I'm not aware that ICE has raided anywhere within the city limits. I could be wrong about that. Perhaps they have. But I think having explicit policies like I've described in place in advance will clarify any future situation. I think one need only look around Falls Church to realize that immigrants have built much of the city that we find so comfortable and pleasant. We owe it to them, and we owe it to people like Nicole Good, who gave her life fighting fascism to protect our immigrant community as vigorously as possible. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
And next, we have Elizabeth Cunningham.
Good evening, and congratulations, Mayor, on your reelection. Senator Hill, on your good news. My name is Elizabeth Cunningham. I'm a resident of Falls. I got a loud voice.
You're good.
Resident of Falls Plaza condos. In June of 2024, the city officially notified us indirectly that they wanted to build an east-west multi-use path connecting Birch and Haycock. We have met with the mayor, we have met with the city manager, I have met with Ms. Underhill, we have talked with the city planner, and every single time we have asked you humbly to consider not building this path literally 10 feet from our doors. We humbly ask you at least consider other options. I have worked with Andrew Olson, and I have some other options that I would be happy to discuss with you. I know he said he was going to present them to you. Other less costly options, other less construction, not that we don't love the construction that's going on the west side of the city. The dust is finally abating. But we beg of you not to tear down the beautiful trees on our property and next to our property. And you please really consider not building this path and considering other alternatives before you build this path. Thank you, and have a good evening.
Thank you.
And that's the final speaker for tonight.
Great. If we can move on to the city manager's report, and if there's anything that you want to address from the public comments, Mr. Shields, we'd welcome that too.
Thank you. So I did want to just touch on a few things. One, with respect to pedestrian safety, we noted in the crash and crime report that is sent out on a weekly basis that we have, over the holiday season, had 4 crashes involving pedestrians with injuries. We're looking at each one of those to understand kind of what happened with those, and we'll have more information to share. In the meantime, and then last week in the crash report, you will see also there was a cyclist that was struck on at Hillwood and Cherry. So that's sort of the 5th in about 2 weeks. And so we're paying close attention to this. We're also communicating with the public that, for drivers to be aware, for drivers to share the road, for people on foot or people on bicycles, please be visible. Try to make eye contact with cars at intersections where possible. And everybody take on a role to promote safety in this area. The city is doing a lot on engineering to improve safety across the city. Every transportation project we have is motivated principally by improving safety for all users of the road, principally improvements to improve safety for walkers and people on bike and people accessing transit. So we'll have more to share on these, sort of what we learned from our analysis of these accidents, but we do know that when it gets dark early, people are out and about. That is the time that we see the spike in crashes, and just want to put out a public service announcement on that topic. With respect to leaf pickup, I just want to take the fact of ending our leaf pickup season to thank our Public Works operations crews. They worked very hard this season to get all the leaves up. They did their sort of cleanup route right after the holiday, and we've received emails complimenting our staff for their great care and dedication in getting that work done. And then we'll have Christmas trees are being picked up on Wednesday, so you can take your tree to the curb, and it will be picked up by ADS this Wednesday, January 14th. And the last part of the manager's report, since Chief of Police is here, I know the council's been sort of paying close attention to recruitment in the police department, and he has a couple of positive updates to share with the city council on recent successful recruitments. Chief Fard.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. Just want to briefly address some recent media coverage regarding the Department of Public Safety's attrition and staffing. There were 2 or 3 reports suggesting that we've lost officers to other agencies while they were in the academy. That information is incorrect. We did not have any officers in the last academy session during the period, and officers just cannot simply transfer to other agencies while they're in the academy. In fact, we've lost no officers to surrounding departments. I'm happy to report on that because I want to make sure council and the community has accurate information. So perhaps if you'll indulge me, just a brief update on our police staffing, our attrition and hiring trends since I took over as the police chief in January of 2024, almost at my 2-year mark. So our authorized strength in the Department of Public Safety, so this is not just the police department, but also our fire marshal's office, is 59.5 positions. They're made of 39.5 sworn officers and 20 non-sworn staff or professional staff members. So during the past 2 years, I've been the chief. With your support, we've added 5 new positions. Those are 2 dispatcher positions, 2 police officers positions, and our professional standards manager position for our accreditation program. So we're not only backfilling the attrition that we've had in this last 2 years, but we're also actively growing the department. So if we just look at our attrition, in the calendar year 2024, we had 7 separations, and last year we had 9. So 16 total in the past 2 years. And largely majority, they were either retirements or voluntary resignations. Importantly, we've not lost any officers to local departments in the area. The majority of our voluntary separations were due to employees simply relocating to other areas out of state, not because of competitive hiring. So numerically, I think it's important in this past 2 years to state that we've had these 16 separations, but also during that same period, we've hired equal numbers, 16 hires. So while adding those 5 new positions, it just basically means we're essentially keeping pace with our attrition while expanding the department. So as of today, we have 6 vacancies as I stand before you. 3 of them are sworn officer position and 3 are non-sworn or professional position. All of our non-sworn vacancies are in dispatch, and our sworn, and as you may know, our sworn officer position and dispatch positions, They're actually our most challenging areas to fill, only because it's specialized skill set, and the screening process takes a while to make sure that we hire only qualified individuals. So last week, we actually held 3 written exam sessions for our dispatch positions. We invited about 36 folks to take the test. These were folks that we've screened their applications. And we currently have multiple lateral officers. These are already certified officers or applicants that are in the screening process and are processing candidates at the same time for our July Police Academy class. So also just want to provide a little bit of important context to these timelines, because the Police Academy only runs twice per year. It's only 2 sessions per year. One is starting tomorrow, by the way, and they're 6 months long. And after graduating, the recruits have to go through a 4-month field training here in Falls Church. So that's about 10 months before they're even certified by the state and are able to patrol solo on their own. In addition to that, we have very extensive screening and background process that can take up to 5 months, even before an applicant reaches the academy. So from application to fully deployable officer, the process can take 12 to 15 months. That means staffing improvements lag well behind hiring decisions. So in summary, if I can wrap up, we're not experiencing a retention crisis. Attrition has been driven primarily by retirements and relocations, not officers leaving for nearby agencies. And we've had much success in hiring 5 new hires just this month. 4 of them are going to the academy tomorrow. We had a deputy fire marshal start today. We have our last PSA vacancies being filled at the end of the month. So things are going well, really well. So it's important that in the coming fiscal years and beyond, we stay competitive so we can continue the trend of keeping our officers in Falls Church. We're actively hiring. We have strong application flow. We're growing the department at the same time, and we're managing long training pipelines that require patience and sustained investment. And I'd be remiss if I didn't thank our hiring staff and background investigators in the police department. These are folks that these functions are ancillary to their primary function, and also Ms. Gibson, our HR director, and her staff for being really, really good partners for us and helping us hire all of these folks. So I just wanted to provide that update to kind of set the record straight of where the police department is with their staffing situation. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have on that.
Great. Thank you, Chief Farr, for providing that. You can't do that important work of community policing without having fully staffed, and I know that recruiting, retaining takes a lot of time, and so thank you for making that a priority for your department. Do we have questions for Chief Farr? Vice Mayor?
Thank you so much, Chief. And again, thank you for having the resource officer at Meridian. I know they're very excited, especially with the K-9, having a K-9 unit there. So you feel, just to double down on what you just said, so you feel that local jurisdictions who might be paying their police officers at a higher rate, you don't feel that you're not seeing that impact in terms of recruitment and retention?
Well, not yet.
Okay.
So a lot of these local jurisdictions that you may have seen in the news recently, a lot of those changes take effect July 1 coming up.
Okay.
So the manager and I have spoken about the upcoming budget process, and we do need to stay competitive.
Right.
I can't speak for the future, but right now the officers are confident that we're doing everything we can to make sure that we stay competitive.
Okay. And I would just ask that you, and I know the city manager will, but just keep us, informed. If it's, we could try to be creative with the budget and, and figure out if there are ways that we can sweeten the deal, if you do start feeling that it's getting harder to compete. So just keep us posted on that.
We will. We do need to make changes in the FY27 budget, and we're working with the manager on that.
Thank you so much.
Other questions or comments for Chief Farr?
I don't have a question. I just wanted to acknowledge both Mr. Henderson and Mr. Ling's comments and my appreciation.
Okay. Thank you, Chief Farr. Appreciate the update. Do we have council requests or follow-ups to the city manager's report? Mr. Snyder?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the talking points that were put out by the city manager in response to the pedestrian injury accidents, crashes, not accidents, how are we getting that out to the general public in ways which they can quickly hear, understand, and internalize with regard to both motorists and pedestrians here? Because I read through your points and I thought they were all really important and very well done. But I want to get them out. I wonder what the plans are for getting them out. And then we continue to have an issue with drivers who come in here. We welcome people, but we want them to abide by the law and abide by the traffic safety rules that we have. And we have clearly the stop sign at Gundry is yet another example. The stop signs everywhere, consistent pattern of running those stop signs, creating hazards all across the city. So beyond putting out these talking points, I really want to get a hold of this and figure out what we can do not only to communicate to our public effectively, but to communicate with those who come into the city as to what our expectations are. So do you have any comments at this point? And I'd really like to develop this more.
Well, I think that's the commitment the city took on with the Vision Zero commitment, and it's braiding it into everything that we do, everything that we say about transportation, and just kind of constantly getting the message out. It's a campaign. Right now, we're putting it out on social and all of our normal tools, but I think we need to do more. I think we need to, when we have public events, to be able to talk about this, just to raise the profile of this issue, kind of in everything that the city does, because it's something that I know the city council hears and kind of your daily interaction with the public and staff does as well. So there are things that people can do themselves, have agency in this and safety, and the city will continue with every project that we do to try to make our streets safer from an engineering perspective. And the chief has made it a big priority since he's been with the city to lead the department and have a more visible enforcement presence for traffic and transportation safety. So those three together, I think, are all need to work together.
Okay, thanks. I know there'll be more to follow up for sure. Second issue, Mr. Ling's comments. I wonder if we couldn't have the city attorney and the city manager and law enforcement get together and give us some advice about what more we can be doing to make the point that we support local law enforcement and that other officers who claim to be law enforcement who may come into the community, what's our response and what should we as a community be thinking about? But I know this is a highly sensitive area, but I'd like some more advice if you can provide that. And that would be both you and the city attorney. I don't know if others feel the same way, but I would like to see more if possible. I believe that our actions would speak very loudly as to what our policies are, but what more can and should we do in this environment? So I'd like to see if there couldn't be some follow-up to that.
I guess a suggestion I have is maybe if the city manager could send out the general orders that was referenced. I think I remember reading them about a year ago. And so if you could kind of share it with the rest of council so we understand what the current policy is and what the implementation of those policies, how do we operationalize those? And then we can have a discussion of, whether it merits edits to it or clarification based on the comments we were hearing.
Yeah, it's an important public safety issue for everyone, and we can share what our policies are, and the council can then direct where what kind of additional follow-up you'd like to have.
Did you have others, Mr.
Thank
Schneider?
you. That's it. Thank you.
Ms. Underhill?
Just for council requests, I'm channeling Ms. Downs here, 'cause she's been so good at bringing up some of the emails we got. We got an email from Danny Polinsky about people stopping on West Street. I was wondering if that's been, on Broad Street. I was wondering if that's been addressed in any way, or that's something that we've been looking into and that we're aware of.
So we are aware of it, and we are in communication with the property managers to spread the word to their tenants that when they order DoorDash or other delivery services, to tell those drivers where they're supposed to go, because there is a designated place on the property where those deliveries or pickups and drop-offs are supposed to occur safely. And it's not right there on the street, certainly not on Broad Street. And on West Street, there's sort of a little indent that suggests that it might be, possibly for that purpose, but it's not. There's nowhere near enough space. So that's one tactic, is to make sure the tenants of the building themselves are aware of it, and then through that mechanism, hopefully the drivers will learn over time, and of course, enforcement.
Has this been a problem with other buildings along Broad?
It is sort of increasingly a problem.
Okay.
And older buildings that don't have any facilities, there's nothing on the site plan that says where deliveries are supposed to be. It's a kind of an older problem. I don't have like a silver bullet solution to it. I think it's going to be something we're going to be grappling with for a while.
Okay. Yeah, I personally haven't noticed it. And so the other thing that I was wondering is, how frequent is it? Is it something that's happening every single day, all the time, or is it something that's a rare occurrence? But I appreciate the fact that we've been in touch with the building and to better communicate and I guess maybe engage enforcement if needed.
And I think maybe just as a culture change, people are going to see this more and more, and I think people are also going to have to accommodate it when you're driving, to sort of take a breath, don't get angry about it. It is something that I think a lot of people do, and so that's one other dimension to it as well.
Yeah. I'm certainly sympathetic to it. I actually think it happens fairly frequently.
Okay, yeah.
Because when I'm on the streets at rush hour or in the mornings, it happens a lot. I guess if we could be proactive, rather than play whack-a-mole, where we say, oh, this building has this issue, let's go and follow up with those tenants. Can we just proactively reach out to all the multifamily buildings that have designated pull-off areas? I think the past several projects, we've been at least have put that forethought in and have designated pull-off areas for Uber and Lyft. If we can proactively let those buildings know in advance before we hear more complaints. We do have an issue with legacy buildings that don't have them, where they stop, in the downtown 1 and 200 block of Broad Street. I don't have a great solution for that either. That's actually the harder one, because they actually don't have an area to pull off, and it's not just education.
I would argue that we need to be even more proactive on this. This, in particular, Modera was anticipated 4 years ago by boards and commissions during the special exception process. This should not be a surprise at all. And I would like to see us be proactive and not just say, okay, tenants, try and help. We need to be proactive. This is not really okay at all. In particular, Modera responded basically that they would have some parking spaces in the garage and they would deal with it, and they really didn't. They have not. And I think we need to be very proactive, either with signage saying no Lyft, Uber, DoorDash stoppage here, or something that would allow us to point at it and say, no, you need to be going, where do you need to go? You need to go around to the back. You need to go into the garage. You need to go into the pull-off. I will say some of our newer buildings have done a really good job. The Broad in Washington, I think, has done there's those 4 spaces right on Broad for pull-off. I know a lot of citizens use them to do a quick hop into Whole Foods, but I haven't seen as much of a problem there because there is something. Founders Row does not seem to have as much of a problem because there is something very clear. Modera does not have clear communication. I think we need to push and say, you need to be more proactive to ensure that this does not happen, and we are not relying upon enforcement to avoid it. It should not be on our law enforcement to be making sure this doesn't happen. It is something that was raised 4 years ago during the special exception process.
I wonder, the other thing I wonder in addition to that is, whether it's DoorDash, Uber, Lyft, I mean, there's probably 5 companies that are responsible for the bulk of these drivers. And so I do wonder if there's some sort of reporting mechanism, just even to the companies, to say, if a citizen can take a picture of a license plate and then send it off to a centralized system that gets reported to the companies, and then we can issue a fine or whatever else, that would be another way of possibly stopping that behavior.
One more thing. Another even more proactive way would be to deal with the actual businesses that are getting drivers and have something in their listing, and to let Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, and all of them know that that isn't acceptable. So it's going back to the root of, if someone's taking a job to drive, it's on the description, do not park in the street. There's a parking area there. I think that's another outreach that could go to businesses.
Yeah.
Ms. Underhill, did you have
Okay,
others?
so just 2 other quick ones. About a month ago, I sent in a question about what it would take to close down an area of Park Avenue for a celebration, or even Broad Street, because that came up for watch night. But I believe one of the businesses was interested in a Mardi Gras celebration, and so even having 1 block of Park Avenue available for a celebration. The response that I got was that this would be something that we would need to take up in council priorities, but is there any way to get an estimation as to what it would cost to close down a section of the street?
Well, so generally, whenever there's a request, it does come in through an application form where the sponsor of the event sort of lays out what they'd like to do. And so then we take it from there. So by policy, we know from experience that closing streets is a heavy lift, particularly the primary highways. So we're not encouraging of those types of applications. The smaller streets, it's kind of appropriate to have a kind of a number of how many we can handle a year. And we've that require a big effort of, barricading down the streets. The smaller block parties, those are every weekend, they're sort of a constant. But it's the busier streets that require a lot of detours and things like that. We ask more of the sponsors to have a plan on how they're going to handle it.
So there is an application form?
There is, yes.
And do we expect people to pay money to do that? Or?
Yeah, typically the sponsors would pay for the overtime and cover the cost of the event and the cost of the street closure.
Okay. Is it possible to get the dollar, so that there would be no cost to the city in that regard?
Because it is so situational, you kind of get the application, we do let them know right from the front that those costs are going to be incurred, so they're not surprised by it, but the actual dollar amount sort of depends on the scale of what's being proposed.
Gotcha. I guess the main thing, especially after the restaurants conversation that we had in December, I was just interested in getting even a ballpark figure. So like every time if the city ever did want to sponsor a small festivity or something like that, if we did want to wrap that into a budget, or if we wanted to have 3 small events per year in addition to the ones that we already do, what would be the dollar cost of that? And so maybe that would even be something that we do if we have leftover money at the end of the year or whatever else. But generally having those figures would be helpful. And so I'm just wondering, is there a way to get a general figure, or are you basically saying there's no way to do that?
I think the kind of the conversation that we want to have with the business community is kind of to sit down and talk about, what would you like to see happen, and then kind of go from there. And we do have a follow-up meeting with the restaurant community that will be in February.
Okay.
And so we're looking forward to continuing that conversation. I think the goal that everybody would have is a vibrant commercial district where people want to come and enjoy themselves, spend money, and their businesses are successful with that as well. So that conversation is going to continue.
Great. Okay. And then the final thing was the WNOD snow events email that we got. What would be a way to get permission from Nova Parks to be able to plow that ourselves? Or what would be the next step if we did want to at least get the authority to do something about the WNOD trail?
So we're going to gather some numbers for that, and so it can be a FY27 budget discussion.
Great.
And so we'll have more information on that.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Other council requests? Okay, I have some. So piggybacking off of ice and snow removal, so not just the WNOD, but I guess another kind of request I have to be proactive is in advance of kind of when we see heavier snow and ice in the city, could we reach out to the frequent, offenders that we know in the city and proactively remind them about our snow removal policy so we aren't doing it during a storm event? Because that's the last thing I really want our public safety teams doing is when we're dealing with people driving in snow and ice already is remind, businesses or residents have to, shovel their sidewalks. So maybe when it's decent weather, we can proactively let them know now.
Yeah. So we have had outreach to them in advance. We did that over the summer. We'll do that again, and we try to get information out before storms are coming.
Probably not thinking about
Well,
shoveling in
the summer, the reason for the summer was that's when people probably are updating their contracts for for parking lot maintenance, and the snow is part of that. That was the thought process anyway. In reviewing our code, we also do need to come to council for a code update, and so we'll be docketing that on the council agenda as well.
Yeah, that was my second question, because I remember the discussion the past 2 years is there was questions of what actual authority we had to fine people, especially after the first or second offense.
Yeah, so the city attorney did take a look at our code, and we need to make some changes to it.
Great. I do want to go back to the pedestrian crashes. So it certainly sounds alarming. I think you mentioned 6 in the past several weeks. Is that like double what we normally see? Is that like, do we normally see no crashes, pedestrian crashes? Like, just to frame it for all of us, like, how bad is it?
Well, when we're a small city, and so, small numbers can sometimes look like big changes. It has our attention, and we want to learn from each of one of those and understand kind of what was going on with that. Are there engineering things that can be changed, or was this, something that's sort of beyond what the city could do to control? But we'll have more information on those and sort of break those down a bit more.
Yeah,
I will note for the public's information, they all were on commercial corridors. So they were on intersections of Broad Street or Washington Street. All the pedestrian crashes were. The cyclist crash last week was on Hillwood and Cherry.
Got it. Yeah, I think I'd be interested in that trend data. So besides the fact that it's darker now, as you mentioned, is it when there's a car that's turning? Because I know that's often when pedestrians are really vulnerable is when there's movement and turning. I know we've talked about no turn on red and making that more visible or making it more prevalent in other intersections. But I guess I would like more trend data of like, do we see themes on why these ped crashes are happening? And to Mr. Snyder's point about how do we increase community awareness? So beyond social media, I would like us to consider actually just having signboards actually out on the street. I know we often deploy those for special events when it's Memorial Day or when we have like a shredding event. But if we are worried about being dark, those signs are pretty bright, and maybe having some at the entrance of either end of the city could help increase alertness of like watch for pedestrians, like something that would help alert drivers that are coming in who may not be on our social media and our newsletters. I guess I would say in terms of the next step on this, this is a council that's probably going to want to dive into the root causes and trends and want to understand what sort of projects or actions we can take. February 9th happens to be our work session when we have the CACT coming. And so that could be a good one if you think that's a reasonable, month out from now to have a more robust discussion on the analysis you have done and what the recommendations from staff might be.
Okay, we can, I'll follow up with staff on that. Also, relatedly to one of the comments earlier tonight about the east-west connection, the bicycle path or the connection to the Meridian School campus, we do plan to be on the work session on February 2nd to discuss some of the options with the City Council. And then our plan was to very quickly after that work session to sit down with the homeowners associations and discuss them with them directly.
Okay. yeah, you let us know what I guess a reasonable time is to follow up on the pet crashes, but I think we're certainly interested in discussing more. And then the last thing I was going to mention is with the General Assembly starting on Wednesday, I think one thing that's in queue is a letter that Cindy is drafting to the SEC about net metering. I think that's one of the priorities around the environment. So no action required on that, but I just want to make sure that as the General Assembly session starts, which is normally a very fast and furious process, that council's aware on the engagement on when we decide to write letters, when we testify. And so for council to be aware that that's going to be coming and to watch your inboxes in the next 2 months.
Definitely will keep you monitored for the General Assembly. I stepped up just to let council know that the SEC public comment period is closing now, and staff under the signature of the city manager submitted comments today, along with some of your community groups that also did, and I can share that letter.
Yeah, we'll share that letter that Kurt Lawrence put together for us with Cindy. And the thrust of it was to maintain a strong net metering program for the customers of Virginia Power.
Okay. And I guess if there's a schedule for when the legislative committee meets, I know you guys ramp up meeting during session. Great. Any final council requests? Yep, Mr. Snyder.
Just to follow up, we had a speaker here with the Homeowners Association, and she mentioned that they've got some options that they wanted us to consider. How are we considering that? And will that be discussed on February 2, or how can we learn more about what their ideas are?
Yeah, then we'll have to follow up to learn more about that, and I will certainly share what we hear from that conversation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's move on to business on the agenda. Madam Clerk, can you call the first item, please?
Yes, for second reading and public hearing, we have TO 25-20, ordinance to 1, amend the city code of the City of Falls Church, Chapter 40, taxation, to add Article 21, commercial property assessed clean energy CPACE financing program. 2, approve and authorize the city manager to execute the related commercial property assessed clean energy CPACE financing program, CPACE program agreement. And 3, approve and authorize the city manager to execute the related Virginia Energy Locality Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy Agreement.
And Mr. Kurt Lawrence, our Environmental Sustainability Coordinator, will provide the staff report tonight. Thank you, Kurt.
Okay. Good evening, Council, and thank you for hearing this item for second reading. The staff report in front of you today is very similar to the report that was in front of you on first reading on December 8th, 2025, to establish the CPACE financing program, which would allow property owners in the city to access financing for green building improvements through the Virginia PACE Authority. And I'm happy to answer any questions or make any clarifications. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. Do we have questions on this? I actually have two things. Sorry, Mr. Reagan, go ahead.
Yes, I was not here for the initial reading, but there was one particular one, I think it's in here, but it was still a little bit unclear, which is what happens after, if we approve this, what happens if the state makes changes to the CPACE program? Do we need to reauthorize? Is it automatically accepted, or how does that work?
So there is language inside the CPACE ordinance that says that if the state makes changes, the city will be, there's nothing the city has to do to be in alignment with those changes. And then, say, for example, the CPACE program were to cease to exist at that state level, any loans that are already on the books would remain on the books between the private parties that agreed to them.
And what if they make changes that we do not like?
The Virginia PACE Authority would notify us of any changes that happen at the state level, and if we don't like them, we can, it's a voluntary program, and we are allowed to leave at any time.
Okay.
Other questions? So I have two. So I know in the appendix, there's this table 1 where we have a number of jurisdictions that delegate the authority, should there be a delinquency, to the capital provider, or do it by project. And I would say majority kind of chose to do it with the capital provider. Is there a recommendation from staff on what we should do?
The recommendation would be to have the lender enforce. Project by project would kind of just add more steps to the process where we see it most appropriate for the lender to enforce, just because that would be well within kind of the scope of their work already as they've agreed to the CPACE loan, whereas for us it wouldn't make as much sense and would kind of just add administrative steps that are unnecessary.
Got it. Well, hopefully we never get to that point with delinquency. My second one is more of a comment. So assuming we adopt this tonight, I would love to, I guess, to better promote this to other property owners, especially maybe more targeted ones where we think there's opportunity to do more energy efficiency upgrades. I know that's one of the things in the CEAT program that we've said wouldn't be great if we had more commercial buildings actually took on energy efficient upgrades, green building codes or thing. And so I would love staff to give that some thought of whether there's an opportunity to let people know that this is a financing option for them.
Right, yeah, thank you. I'll note that in the CPACE documents, VPA mentions that they will help with that as well, providing promotional materials and anything that staff needs to kind of get the word out.
Yeah, I will say it's just not easy to understand. And so to the extent that Falls Church can help translate what CPACE actually means and does and why people should consider it, it feels like this is a great program that more people should take advantage of.
Yeah, understood. Thank you very much.
Great. I think this requires a public hearing, so I'm going to open up for any public comment by members of the audience. Okay.
And we had nobody sign up in advance.
So, seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. Is there a motion? Yes, Mr. Schneider.
I'd move approval, but I do have a question.
Okay, you want to take the question first?
Move to adopt TO 25-20. So how do we establish that, in fact, there was some action taken to make the building more resilient, for example? Would that mean that there would be certain codes that would apply to it, or these are pretty broad categories? I just want to make sure that this goes for what we all intended to go for.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain a little bit about that process?
So when a property owner meets with a CPACE lender, they sort of agree to terms to do any number of projects. And then when they specify those terms, they will fill out an application with VPA, the Virginia PACE Authority. And one of their top priorities is making sure that these projects align with the CPACE allowable upgrades. And so in the ordinance, there's a number of things like environmental remediation and energy efficiency that are mentioned. And then as the applications come in, it's on VPA to approve those or to not approve those. So there may be more information within the application, but that's all we have in front of us tonight, is that it's on VPA.
Do we have any review authority at that point?
No, the idea is that we agree to the principles in the ordinance itself and allow VPA to make the approval statements.
Is it possible to just get a report every now and then to make sure that the loans are actually going for things that are consistent with what we intend with this ordinance?
I would be happy to follow up with those involved in the CPACE loan and assess that information.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, there was a motion. I don't think I heard a second yet. Is there a second?
Second.
It's Connolly on the second. You call roll, please.
Mr. Agan?
Yes.
Ms. Conley?
Yes.
Ms. Downs?
Yes.
Ms. Flynn?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Ms. Underhill?
Yes.
And Mayor Hardy?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Thank you, council.
Great. Let's call the next item.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence, for your work on this.
Yes, our next item is a proposed resolution, TR 26-03, resolution appointing city council members to city council committees as liaisons to city boards and commissions to serve on regional organizations, including Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, COG, policy boards and committees, and to fill unexpired terms on the Community Criminal Justice Board and the West Falls Community Development Authority as of January 12, 2026.
know that since our work session discussion on it last week, there's been a lot of behind-the-scenes discussions and trying to balance workload and succession planning, so appreciate everyone's conversations to work this out. Are there any other comments or things we need to do on this final, hopefully final version? Okay, is there a motion?
Move to adopt TR 26-03.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
I think I heard Underhill on the second first. Sorry, Mr. Agan, you'll get one soon. You call roll, please.
Yes, Mr. Agan?
Yes.
Ms. Conley?
Yes.
Ms. Downs?
Yes.
Ms. Flynn?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Ms. Underhill?
Yes.
And Mayor Hardy?
Yes.
Thank you for your work on this, Council.
Great. I think we're moving on, sorry.
And I just want to say thank you, Ms. Heath. I know that you worked a lot on this, and we had some back and forth, so thank you for your patience.
Great. I think we're ready to move on to the work session items. Mr. Shields?
Okay, I was waiting for the clerk to read it out, but since it's a work session, I don't think we need to do that. So the first item for work session discussion is a process for the naming of the parkland at 604 South Oak Street, often referred to as the Fellows property. And Amy Youngs, our Deputy Rec and Parks Director, is here to describe that process. There's a resolution for it, and we're asking for council action on that resolution at your meeting on January 26th. And in addition, we thought we would take the opportunity to just give you a quick update on the site plan, which is at 90%. So what 90% means is that we are essentially done with the design process and we're ready to advertise for bids, and we're hoping to get under construction this coming spring. So the plan is really intended as a briefing, not so much as an input session, just in terms of where we are in the process. Ms. Youngs, let me turn it over to you.
I don't know if your mic is on, Ms. Youngs.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Thank you. So good evening. Thank you for your time. I'm Amy with Recreation and Parks, and here tonight to talk about the naming of the property at South Oak Street. So the city purchased the property in 2019, and creation of the master park plan followed right after. The process to develop the master plan included several community meetings and input, and was finalized in 2022. Since then, we've continued advancing the project, and as Mr. Shields said, we're now at 90% for the site plan. And Mr. Astorga is on the Teams call, so he will speak to the site plan timeline and schedule shortly. But I'm here to talk to you tonight about how we're going to engage the community in the naming process. So as you may recall from the recent parklet naming process, the city code establishes both the criteria and procedures for naming city facilities. Under the city code, city facilities, which includes parks, can be named based on their geographical, historical, or ecological context. Exceptions can be made to commemorate an individual's service or help identify the park's purpose. The community engagement process we're planning will very closely mirror the one that was done for the parklets. We plan to collect community input through an online survey. That survey would get promoted through city social media, the Focus, the Rec and Parks newsletter, the morning announcements. And then we would also go to boards and commissions. We would go to the Historical Commission, Planning Commission, Rec and Parks Advisory Board, Arts and Humanities Council, and then also given the park's proximity to Oak Street Elementary, we also want to engage the school board on it. Similar to the parklet again, we would offer the form and have follow-up questions. So if someone is asking to name the park after a person, we'll ask what impact they've had on the city. If someone is asking to name the park after a historical event, we'll ask how the city was involved. If someone is requesting to name the park after a natural or geographical feature, we'll ask why the park should be named after that feature. So as Mr. Shields said, for the timeline, we would be coming back here on January 26th to set a public hearing date and get a referral out for boards and commissions. Once that is done, then we'll go ahead with the online form, publish it, advertise it through those channels, hit all the boards and commissions that we plan to get to, with the hopes of collecting all the recommendations through the end of February. Then we would consolidate all the responses, come back to you March 9th for your work session for discussion, and then a public hearing and council action to name the park by resolution on March 23rd. So that is it for me. I'm happy to talk any further about the process, any input you all have on how we go about that, and Mr. Astorga can also talk about the schedule.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Youngs, for that briefing. I'm sure council up here has questions or comments about either the 90% plans, which I'm hearing is not open for input, but more for an update, or the naming process. I'm going to start down there, Mr. Egan.
So I appreciate the naming process and hearing it. I personally have no preferences on the name. However, one concern I have, and it's maybe related a bit to the changes that are occurring with the website, which are great, but the current plans, the 90% plan is a very technical document, and it needs to be for that audience. However, if I were in the neighborhood, I would look at it and go, I have no idea what I'm looking at. I had to go look at it quite a bit. I do appreciate that other boards and commissions that normally do not have input were included in the plans, because I know the CACT did get a chance to provide some input, and I saw some changes on the Oak Street sidewalk and crosswalks related to that, and I appreciate that. But I think knocking on doors on right there's a lack of familiarity of exactly what's planned within the neighborhood. So we want to make sure that the neighbors and the community understand what this is going to look like in a friendly way. That may have been in an earlier plan. One of the challenges I think we're facing with the changes has been earlier plans are not necessarily available, and they've been kind of slipping off. And this may be more towards the city manager, that we need to make sure that that information is easily digestible by residents. Site plans are not. It's really good, but the 90% plan, most people are going to look at it and go, huh?
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Flynn?
Thank you. Thanks for the work of Rec and Parks on this, the ongoing kind of multi-year engagement that you've had. I think similarly to Mr. Egan, I just wanted to, one, confirm, well, this is a separate question, but one, confirm that this process is essentially like substantively similar to what we went through with the EDA parklet naming. There isn't really anything different in this, though.
It's very similar. The only difference is the online form versus an email address to send in public submissions. And then we changed up the boards and commissions we're going to slightly. They went to EDA, we're going to go to the school board.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
Okay,
pretty much it.
so that sounds great, just to have that confirmation. And then as to the 90% site plans, I know that there has been kind of community engagement, or that, the department and that the advisory board do get kind of questions about where the project is, or, what the 90% plans mean, or were they approved. And so similarly to Mr. Egan, I would just ask that, the timeline is there on the project page, but it isn't like immediately clear that it's at 90% or what 90% means. And so maybe under that plans and data portion where it says you can, view the site plans, if there's some sort of more straightforward language we could include there to help summarize what that means, that there isn't really input at this point, but that they're there for kind of consultation. That I think would be helpful. And if we could also, if the department hasn't already done so, kind of do an email to that listserv that you have on the Fellows property, just to make sure that people know where we're at design-wise, what that means, and then also the naming process that's going to now be underway.
We are, Mr. Astorga is coming to the advisory board meeting next week, so we were going to send the email out to those folks again.
Thank you.
Ms. Downs?
Thank you so much for that presentation. I just have to say, I know it is city code, in terms of the naming process, but as I think my colleagues, know that I was on the school board when we renamed the school directly across the street from this parcel of land. And that was this incredibly contentious, as you can imagine, time in our community. We also renamed the high school. What I'm getting at is that I'm not a fan of naming anything after an individual, and I'm not directing this at you. I know this is in our code and all that, but I just, as I guess the committee and the, Rec and Parks Board thinks about names, I'd love to steer away from individuals. I just think that it can be, you could find yourself down the road having to rename it because something came to light about that individual. And I would prefer to name it against a something historic, geographical, what have you. In fact, one of the things with that elementary school, formerly named Thomas Jefferson, we had even talked about naming it Tripp's Run. And again, we try to do research on who Tripp was, and again, he was a pastor back in the early 1900s, but, who knew, we didn't know what his views were on, and so at the time I was, that we all agreed that just Oak Street Elementary, again, placemaking, this was something that, so again, I know I'm not directing this at you. I know this is city code. I'm reading this in the staff report. But again, I would like to try to encourage those who are going to help make that decision to steer us away from an individual's name. That's just my perspective. Thank you.
Can I hop in for 5 seconds just to say that during EDA parklet naming, so I think Rec and Parks Advisory Board and similarly Planning Commission had sort of similar concerns, and so I think that the boards and commissions are already having kind of these sorts of conversations, and so hopefully, it will continue when it goes to them, but their own dialogue took these issues into account during the EDA parklet naming.
Great.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that is sage advice because many of us, while we didn't have to live through what the school board did, saw the conversations that took place in the community. So I think that is wise advice to consider. Other questions or comments? Anything this way? Okay, I have...
Mr. Storga, do you want to, sorry.
Mr. Storga, do you want to chime in?
No, I guess Amy said it all. We are at 90%. We have a couple of items to iron out and work with the Planning Commission to iron those out. And then from there, we will be going to final, the 100% plans and then construction documents and hopefully bidding and construction in the summer of this year.
Great. I have a number of comments/questions. One is, I know that when we last saw the plans before 90%, we had discussed the urban ag and component of it. In particular, I want to say the plans proposed pawpaw trees and berry bushes, if I remember correctly. Is that correct, Mr. Astorga?
Yes, we are having the shaggy bark acorns and the pawpaw trees and the berry patch, yes.
Okay. I guess I'll just, again, because I feel like I spoke about this maybe a year ago, caution, I guess, against the pawpaw trees, mostly because they have a very limited, shelf life, and so they make a big mess. And so I would just, normally people go out in the woods to harvest them, but I think because it's more of an urban park where it's going to have lots of pedestrians nearby, that we just understand what the maintenance of pawpaw trees might look like, especially if you don't have people harvesting them when they're ripe. And then on that note, anytime we build new capital, I make a point of making sure we think about the maintenance of this park. So clearly, it has been unmaintained, this 2 acres, for many years. And so I want to be cognizant of what the new maintenance cost is. And so, Mr. Shields, when we probably start the FY27 process, I guess the park won't be done, but we should probably keep in mind what the additional maintenance cost of this park will be, and we factor that in. And then also looking ahead, the construction process. So that whole neighborhood is going through a lot right now because they're in the middle of the Greenway Downs, traffic calming at the top of Seton and Oak. This is a high traffic ped corridor for all the Oak Street Elementary students. And so I know we're adding a sidewalk on Parker, but depending on the construction of all of that, I just want to make sure we're very cognizant of the high pedestrian usage and that the construction plans are probably coordinated well with the schools and what it means for kind of morning and afternoon walkers.
Can I add to that as well? It's also may come at the same time as the construction on the Seton Lane, the Sharrow Bridge. That's also coming up on the back side of Oak Street. So just so we're aware that those two things happening at the same time would definitely be a jam around the school.
And then my last one, which is a suggestion that I've made back when I think I was Rec and Park liaison, is anytime we do signage at our parks, I know that we kind of like how each park has a unique sign, like the Howard Herman one's got the B, and every park's a little different. It'd be great if we had some sort of unifying badge so people knew they were all public parks. So I like that they're all unique, but I have gotten questions from people of like, oh, I didn't know that this was a public trail going down. And so if there was some sort of badge that says, this is City of Falls Church Public Park, and that was the consistent badge across all of them, it could be a good way to balance having unique signage, but something that's consistent so people know that, because we used to, back in the day, have the old red signs. I still remember the old signs, and then since then we moved away from the old red signs to kind of these more unique signage. So I imagine Fellows has a unique sign. So let's just make sure people know that it's now a public facility and after we acquired that land.
If I could weigh in on this, I'd say any common signage also needs to be consistent with other signage within the city. We get into a habit of several different sets of signage, so it would be good if it was consistent.
We spent a lot of time kind of creating
maybe with wayfinding,
brand and look and feel, and so again, some sort of unifying badge would help Rec and Parks know that, or people know that it's a Rec and Parks facility. So, thank you for taking all of our comments and for the update.
My pleasure. Thank you.
We look forward to kicking this off. Okay, next item, Mr. Shields.
So the next item is a proposed amendment to the current year budget, the FY26 budget. And I'll just note, in terms of scheduling for this, there are items that are going through the school board process, and their school board is using fund balance. Whenever the school board uses fund balance, that requires an appropriation of the city council. And the other kind of large part of this is the use of contingency in the city's general fund to meet higher than planned legal expenses is one piece of it. And then the second piece is to join the schools in one of the items that they're pushing forward in this budget amendment, which is a facilities condition assessment. And we're asking for $75,000 out of that contingency for that purpose as well. I'm sorry, I've sort of stole David's thunder. I'm sorry. So now, with that introduction, let me turn it over to David for a report. We are asking for first reading on this ordinance after tonight's discussion on the night of January 26th.
And actually, before we hand it to you, David, Ms. Connolly has a disclosure to make.
The City Council is discussing tonight an amendment to the city's adopted FY 2026 budget and a corresponding appropriation of funds to implement that amendment. I am an employee of the Falls Church City School Board, which will be affected by the proposed budget amendment. As a result, I am in a group of 3 or more people who may realize a reasonably foreseeable direct or indirect benefit from the proposed ordinance. After consideration, I am electing to participate in this transaction because I am confident in my ability to participate fairly, objectively, and in the public interest.
And before we turn it over to Mr. So, if I can also just note that the school's Chief Operating Officer, Alicia Prince, is joining virtually as well. Now, Mr. So, sorry for the long introduction.
All right, thank you, Mr. Shields, and good evening, members of the council. Tonight, we are presenting this budget amendment to request to appropriate our contingency into our City Attorney and Public Works Department for a total of $300,513. to transfer $35,000 between capital projects and to appropriate school operating fund balance of $1,064,000. There is no additional funding requested in this budget amendment, only a transfer of budget between departments and between capital projects. You can also find more details in the budget amendment. Also, we will be including in the first reading a request to appropriate opioid abatement funds of $10,000. The funds will be used for the Opioid Abatement Authority led by Fairfax County. It would require a $10,000 match from our City of Falls Church designated opioid funds, and each locality is also doing a match. The project is a public awareness, anti-stigma campaign regarding substance abuse, and it would be usable by all of the Northern Virginia localities. I'm happy to take any questions from the council.
I'll just note the opioid part was not part of the staff report. We got word on that just today, and so we thought we'd bring it up verbally, and if council agrees, add it to the staff report for January 26th.
Great. Questions from council or comments? Mr. Reagan?
I was looking at the staff report description of the legal fees, and it sounds like some of them were due to a consultant not really performing up to stuff. Are we trying to get compensation from that poor performance to offset some of these additional costs that incurred because of that?
So let me... Yeah, go ahead, Sally.
Thank you. I can answer that, Councilmember Egan. We are in discussion. The amounts are not as high as they would think. We've spent on that newer project about $10,000 so far. We have gotten a change in project manager as of just late last week. The previous projects may have suffered from a similar condition, but we had not, well, let me just say this, the consultant consults for our Department of Public Works and their project management team. And so the city attorney's office isn't really managing that. I will say that to the extent that's happened in the past, we're encouraging and partnering with DPW to pay much closer attention to the quality of the service we're getting from that group of consultants. And in our most recent case on a newer project, we did get a new project consultant because the services were not satisfactory.
Okay. Ms. Flynn?
So I had the same question as Mr. Egan, and I guess I'm not like totally clear on the answer, Sally or Ms.
Oh, sorry.
So are we actually seeking some sort of contribution from the prior consultancy work, or is it just that the legal fees are higher because it entailed more review or more reviewing the work or redoing the work, and that you also anticipate higher fees going forward despite the troubleshooting you've now done because of the scope of the projects that we're undertaking?
Right. Looking backwards to see what kind of funds they cost us, we can look at that and see if we can recuperate any of those funds for past projects. I don't think it became clear to us that the issue that we were having was a consulting issue until we had a kind of more experience with that, and then we took very swift action. But so we have discussed seeking reimbursement. I'll work with DPW, look at their contract, talk to their consultant with them, and see if there's any recuperation that can be had. We are taking another step in that we have, instead of relying on the consultant to prepare deeds, we have developed a form deed that will now be used for all of our projects. We are going to be, that deed got distributed last week, and we are going to be training the DPW team on that. And we also have talked to the city manager's office about training the DPW team on real estate transactions, kind of the foundational elements of those transactions, so that the deed and plat review requires less work at the city attorney's office. So with the form deeds that we've just completed, the training that's coming up, and some education on real estate transactions, I think we will see these future deed and plat reviews decreasing in cost. The challenge with them is that each of these projects has, dozens of properties affected. And so, so there's a lot of time that goes into reviewing each of those.
I guess, yeah. So that leads to my next question. That leads to my next question, which is, having now gone through a number of sort of the CIP projects or greening of Lincoln, being in the midst of that, but then also having this issue arise somewhat with the South Maple and Annandale like roundabout and whatever we'll be doing on West Broad with needing to kind of get all of these private property owners or these different kind of easements squared away. Is this CIP or sort of the operating budget adequately accounting for the legal costs and sort of these deed and plat reviews for each of these projects? Or do we need to kind of pay closer attention to that when we're looking at the budget generally?
So you've hit on something that I have also noticed and recommended to our CIP team, that as projects, as they take on project and budgets for them, that they include a line item for legal. Those projects have line items for engineering and right-of-way acquisition and all kinds of other necessary professional services, and legal services is just one of those services that are necessary to get the project completed. The response that I've gotten back is that all these projects we're seeing now have been budgeted a long time ago, and so that legal line item was not in there, but I have gotten confirmation that that is something they would be including in the future as new projects come on board.
Okay, great. So yeah, that would have been my request, that then as we're doing the CIP, since they are going up, on these multi-year plans, that we start to incorporate the legal review as part of it, so that we're not doing it as the back end, but we know there's going to be substantial sort of like parcels that we're going to be dealing with for a number of the projects, if the scoping of them isn't such that we can avoid the issue at the outset.
Right.
Okay.
Could I jump in on that one? Because I had that same thought, is that for clearly new projects that we're adding to the CIP, we should bake in legal costs as part of a capital expense and not expect business as usual operating dollars to cover for that. Do we have any projects that are in the middle, so not yet at the deed phase where we need to get right-of-way acquisition and spend that money, but have slotted in the CIP where we need essentially more money allocated towards that so we don't run into this again?
So I don't know the answer to that. We might have to look into that. I can work with Wyatt and respond to that
We don't
as
need
soon
to have
as
the
we
answer.
can.
Andy's getting up, but we don't need to have the answer now, but I guess that would be the request.
I think we can look at that.
Yeah, because I just don't want to be in this situation in 6 months or 12 months, and we're like, oh, we actually need more money again, because there's a number of other transportation projects that we've already slotted that are coming up that will probably be running into this again, too. Thank you. Sorry, please go ahead, Erin.
So to finish on sort of the general government side, these do seem like necessary costs. I do think that it makes sense to kind of have the facilities assessment at the same time we're doing the facilities comp plan chapter, to make that kind of more realistic and comprehensive report out for what it is that this actually looks like and may cost, or that we need to think about doing. Structurally, we structured this as contingency for a reason, with the administration changes and the tariff issues and the supply chain problems when all of this was going on, and sort of kept it in the tax rate on purpose. And so, I understand using it based on where we are, but at the same time, I don't want to kind of lose sight that this was contingency that taxpayers bore the cost of. And so when we get to sort of underspending, which is where we normally kind of then look at cost shifting later, my hope would be that we keep this conversation in mind, so that underspending we don't view as a pot of money, but underspending we view as potential rollover into capital reserves or whatever it is, to help offset the high kind of tax rate and costs that taxpayers are burdened with. So I just don't want to lose this completely. I would like to prefer, to the extent we have underspending later, to then be backfilling contingency and carrying it over and kind of crediting that back, so to speak, to taxpayers to the extent we're able to do so. And then structurally, I guess on the school side, these seem like safety, all sort of safety and security improvements that on the school board and superintendent's sort of judgment are things that, they would like to take on. I think our facilities assessment said we last did it in 2020. I would like to understand, to the extent we can have an answer to it as to like when the last facilities condition assessment for the schools was, that number is so much higher. And then also just my kind of structural point on the school side, I would like to understand as we go into kind of budget and finance sort of season and discussions a little bit more about the school fund policy and sort of the 1.3 or 2% that ends up getting built into the school budget, which again, like amounts to sort of a 2-cent cushion in the tax rate that's a carryover from year to year. So I just kind of wanted to add that out as like two structural issues in response to the budget amendment. So thank you.
Ms. Downs.
Thank you so much. Yeah, interestingly, just before this meeting, I'm on the board of the Falls Church Education Foundation, and Dr. Dade was there giving a budget presentation, and he did bring that up. And he didn't specifically say it, but the way that he implied was that they had never done one, or at least in recent memory. Like he's sort of lost as to like what needs to receive in terms of schools a priority in terms of CIP and what, and so he sort of implied that they really needed it was long overdue. So I don't know, maybe that's why the price is higher, because it hasn't been done in a long time. I don't know. I didn't get into the weeds with him on that, but that's what it seemed like to me. But I do, with the contingency, taking money out of the contingency, I know we don't have a lot of options, but I will just put that out there that those of us who were at office hours this week, we did have a young single mom come see us who had lost her job. She worked for the State Department, lost her job. And one of the things that I think we might start seeing an uptick now in people reaching out to the city is that some federal employees who might have had sort of a package, when they left, might now have spent through that. And that's what happened to this young woman, is she sort of spent what she had, and now she doesn't have much income. And so I think we might unfortunately see an uptick in citizens who need help. And so, I noticed in the staff report, it said that our staff felt like it's been okay. And I think that's probably true up to this point, but, hopefully we won't. And I know Ms. Acosta said that she, has seen people requesting more payment plans for paying off taxes and things. So if you can, as I know it says in the staff report, they'll keep us posted, but I'm hoping that we don't see too much of more of those visits to our office hours. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess on that point, so I don't belabor it, I don't love the idea of using contingency for these purposes, even if they're important. And because we set aside revenue contingency in case revenues didn't come through, I guess before we do first reading, it would be great to get whatever latest data we have on Q2 revenues, because I think that would give council more assurance that things might be okay. And so I know that we normally don't get that till February, but if we have like October data, that could be reassuring.
So I can share some of that. So we do have some October data that I do feel comfortable sharing. So for the month of October, in terms of our sales tax and our meals tax, against prior year, we're about $250,000 higher than last year. And so I think October was kind of the first sign of good news. November numbers we're still working on, and so I think that's something that we're closely monitoring. So I think to some of the council members' points, some of the impacts clearly didn't show in October, but could be shown in November and December. So that's the latest update that I have. Again, other revenues that we have, I'm working very closely with the respective departments, but that's the latest information I have as of today.
Thank you for being prepared for that.
Yes.
And then I guess on the other side is the expense contingency is not knowing whether we're going to burn through the human services safety. And I guess the other thing to anticipate is with the HR1 changes to Medicaid and more people needing healthcare, like that's a future change that's going to come effective this coming year. And so we're not going to see those impacts yet. I was in a COG policy meeting about it. And so that's something that I know many of the local governments are planning for. And so if we can just, again, not look at what usage is so far, but try to look ahead, because this contingency is supposed to last us through the second half of the FY26. So I just want to be cognizant of that. Other comments or questions? Mr. Schneider?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I agree completely with your comments. when we created the contingencies in this fiscal year's budget, I don't think we were thinking that they would be expended for normal sort of expenses, that we were really reserving it to assure a safety net for our citizens if they needed it. So I would agree with your comments. With regard to the city attorney legal fees, I see that $100,000 of the $225,000 is projected for litigation. That seems like a lot of money for the kind of litigation and the kind of issue that we're talking about. City attorney, can you tell us a little bit more about that? And if you don't spend the $100,000, I assume that the money would go back into the contingency. Is that right?
I would suppose that's right. I will defer to finance and management on that. I did agree. I agree with you that the Pearson Square litigation has been more expensive than I anticipated, and for that reason, I didn't want to underestimate it this time. So I put in an amount that mirrors kind of the cost that we've seen over the past year on that project. I am hopeful that it can come in at less than that, but I didn't want to return for more money either. So I will certainly communicate with our litigators and make sure that we are being as cost effective as possible. But I can say, working with them, they're a highly efficient team.
Great, thank you.
Ms. Connolly?
I would agree with all my colleagues that when we set aside this contingency, it was not to pay for unexpected expenses in this manner. So if we had not had the contingency, where would we be taking this money from? Would that come from last year's fund balance?
Yeah, well, it could either come from fund balance, or, the difficulty is because we're in the middle of the fiscal year for the city attorney, there are a lot of projects that the city attorney is working on right now, and sort of having financial uncertainty about how that work's going to be paid for would cause a lot of things to stop. In any event, we would need a budget amendment from the city council. If it weren't taken from contingency, it'd have to come from somewhere else. Where else in the city operating budget it would come from is not clear at this point. Sometimes in May, you do know what your underspending is, and then we could make those decisions, but we don't have that. We don't have that information right now. So that's why we're asking we do very much respect what the council's intentions were for the contingency. And the fact that it was built into the tax rate means that taxpayers are paying for that contingency. And so we are bringing to you as a serious matter that we do think it needs the council's attention, and we think the contingency is the best way to handle it right now. Come May, we'll have more information, and we might have some other strategies where the council could sort of backfill some of these issues if there's other needs.
So then I would agree with Ms. Flynn's suggestion that we do, if we're floating ourselves with a contingency, right now we make sure that we backfill it, reimburse it, so that we're able to use it again in the future, or use it if needed in the next 6 months of this fiscal year. Okay. I think that's a good suggestion. Regarding the facilities condition assessment, did you say Ms. Prince is on the line?
She is. She's participating virtually.
Okay. Just a question about that. I know that Ms. Hiscott often talked, before she was ever on City Council or even the Education Foundation, she participated in a facilities study. At this point, that was probably, and I think Ms. Mester was on that as well, right? How many years, was that 25 years ago?
Not that long, I've only been here 20.
Okay.
We're probably looking at about 10 years. It was under Dr. Berlin's superintendent tenure, and it was before we started the full city hall.
So that's at least like 18 years, right?
Well, maybe it was when I was early in my tenure here, but yes, it is, let's say 10 to 15.
Okay.
It's a, certainly an adequate time where one has had assessments and facility changes that it should be revisited.
And that study itself was what prepared us for the 20 years of change we've had in the school buildings.
So-
The addition to Mount Daniel, the addition to Oak Street, the new high school, that was all part of that
Correct.
plan, right?
Correct.
So then this is following on that, this request for a facility study to take a look at where we are right now with all of our facilities. And does it, when you say we want to get involved in it with the schools?
So I don't want to speak for Ms.
Okay.
Prince, and she can speak to the scope of work for this. What we're planning for the general government is that this is really about the buildings themselves, the equipment that's in them, and the condition of those in terms of planning out capital expenditures to maintain them.
Okay.
It is not the type of study we've done in the past about, well, what about population growth or enrollment growth? Do we need bigger buildings? And at least on the general government side, that is not really what this assessment is about. It's more, when do we need to replace an HVAC unit? But Ms. Prince can speak to the scope of work for the schools.
Thanks.
And to Ms. Connolly, your point, it was about facility and enrollment growth at that time where we did that study, but it also did start looking at end-of-life items. And since then, the schools had tried to look at roofs and HVACs, but that's very outdated information now.
Okay. And then before Ms. Prince answers, just Mr. Shields, as far as would the general government looking at every single one of the general government facilities, Property Yard, Cherry Hill, Aurora House, City Hall, Library?
Let me invite Mr. Young to speak to the scope of work.
So I think we've scoped this out to look at all of the buildings. I think we would prioritize the main facilities of the library, the City Hall, and the community center. We've just made a number of investments in the Aurora House and the Property Yard. We have different plans for in the future, but that's the intent.
Okay, thanks.
Are you still looking for Ms. Prince to chime in about the school facilities plan? Ms. Prince, are you with us?
Good evening. I apologize, I'm not on camera. My camera is acting up, so I do apologize. But yes, so the facilities condition assessment for the school division. So while there may have been some assessment done in, the last 2 decades, we do not have access to that material. We spent numerous amounts of hours looking for those materials, trying to assess them, trying to determine how how decisions were made related to our school buildings. So our assessment is a full assessment of all of our facilities, all of the systems in our facilities, really understanding where they are for their use of life, making sure that we understand when we'll need to make upgrades or changes to those systems across the board, and really having a clear assessment. We want to make sure that when we are making capital improvements, we're doing them based off clear data, and right now we're unable to do that. So this is really about making sure we have a clear picture of all of our facilities, and also understanding what the use of some of our facilities and the high level of community use means for the life on some of our systems as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
One other point, right, of clarification based on some of the earlier discussion. The schools number is significantly higher because the footprint of the schools, which these studies are typically priced on and based, that they've got more square footage in one building than we have in all of ours. And so that's the driver of why the school number is much higher than the general government.
Sandra Hill?
Just a quick question about Aurora House. So my understanding is that the geothermal project came in under budget, and so therefore we're transferring money from the geothermal project. Is $35,000 the amount that it came in under budget, or is there extra that came in under budget?
Yeah, so in my discussions with the project management group, $35,000 is what they were comfortable with. The project is still not completed, but that was the amount that was needed for the Aurora House, and and that was
Feel comfortable, okay.
discussed.
But there might be even more that's under budget that we would then see later on. I guess my question is, if it's more under budget, when would we get notified of that? Or is that something that city council would have discretion over?
Because it's been appropriated for the community center project, we would give you a briefing, but if it were being used for that community center project, council wouldn't normally vote on that. But we can provide you what the numbers are right now, so you have visibility into it. It is a higher number of, we didn't use the full contingency there, and, for some other reasons, it is a larger number than the 35,000 that's moving over to the Aurora House.
Okay. But generally, good news when something comes in under budget, so that's good to hear. And so the Aurora House is completely, we are moving forward with solar panels. We are going to be able to get the rebates from the federal government. Like, we are all set to get everything done in time for when things expire.
So we will put in the paperwork for the rebates, but there's no guarantee on the rebates, but we will compete for them.
Okay.
We will work hard to get them.
Get them. Okay, great. And is there an expectation as to when that's going to be implemented?
I don't have the latest on that.
Okay, that's okay. If there is an update at some point, it would be good to know, because I know we just had somebody coming in for office hours on Monday, last week on Wednesday, who was asking about that, or who brought it up. Thank you.
Okay. Other than the comment I had about, I think many of us shared about use of contingency, I guess I wanted to talk about some of the school uses. So I know it sounds like the school board did discuss this back in December, but I'd like to better understand it. So the $260,000 for the doors at the new high school, given that the high school is 4 years old and it sounds like the doors are not closing properly, like, is there any sort of recourse we have with that other than spending $260,000? Just feels like a 4-year-old school should have doors that close properly.
We do agree with you. We have gone through many processes with the original builder in this process, and have extended what we could through those. And so our next and the option that we do have to extend is to really repair these doors to make sure that they are closing properly. So we have extended that process, and we're grateful for the process that we went through. We used our project management partners who really helped us to push that process, but we've met all the requirements that we can through our warranty.
Got it. And just so I know, how long is a warranty for a $120 million school?
They vary based on all the different things. Each items have various warranties on them.
Okay. And then similar to Ms. Flynn's question about fund balance, I know the policy says no more than 2%. And so my understanding is even after spending this, appropriating this $1 million, there's a $1.4 million balance remaining. So that would be, had we not appropriated the $1 million, then we'd be way over the 2%. Is that correct?
That's correct. Recommendations when it comes to budgeting and school budgeting is that we put 2% in reserve for contingency spending. And so that is what we do following that recommendation. So had we not spent that money, we would be over budget. Again, many times us being over budget tends to happen due to various changes, salary lapses, those things. We had some changes in our personnel over this past year, and that tends to be why we see some of those funds.
Thank you, Ms. Prince. I think based on this conversation, you could tell that we're all just scrutinizing the budgets in anticipation of, tougher budget seasons. And so I think one question that I often ask is to know what fund balances are year to year and what we roll over year to year. So I think just to prepare you, that is likely a question I'm going to have when we start the FY27 budget season, is maybe a 5 or 10 year look back at what fund balances have been for each year, so we know, are we always exceeding the 2%, and what that might imply.
Understood. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for the discussion. Any final comments before this comes? Mr. Shields, do you recommend this coming to us for first reading next week?
That's right, on January 26th.
Okay. I don't see any final questions or comments, so I think we can move on to the next item. Thank you, Mr. So.
Right. Thank you, Council. So the next item is discussion of the purchase agreement for sewer capacity. with Fairfax County, and Andy Young will provide a staff report on this. We've got a slide deck with about 12 slides that will help update the City Council on this acquisition, and I think there have been some good developments as Mr. Young has been working on this with the county staff. And Andy, you might want to introduce anybody else from DPW that's here as well.
That's right. Thank you, Wyatt. Good evening, Council. Thanks for the opportunity to speak this evening. I'm joined by Reza Ravandust from our Department of Public Works. And we're here to present the city's draft sanitary sewer capacity purchase agreement with Fairfax County. Since we last spoke with you in March of 2025, the city's been engaged with staff from Fairfax County about an alternative strategy for addressing peak flow limitations in the Fairfax County system. Instead of constructing a flow equalization basin in Cavalier Trail Park, county staff have proposed that the city would instead share in a cost of a sewer main relocation and upsizing project in Trips Run. This upsizing project would remove a key constraint in the Fairfax County system and allow them to sell the city additional peak flow capacity, which we've talked about a bunch. We're currently scheduled to bring this agreement back to you for authorization at your January 26th regular meeting, pending, of course, your feedback tonight. And Fairfax County Board of Supervisors review and approval schedule still being finalized, but we anticipate their authorization by April. So, Tay, if we can go to the slide deck for me. Okay. And then go ahead, if you don't mind, and we'll go to slide 3. So the agreement before you this evening is essentially split into two separate but connected transactions. An $8.8 million capacity purchase this fiscal year. These are parameters that you've seen before. 1.5 million gallons per day of treatment capacity, a maximum total daily volume of 3 million gallons per day, and a peak flow limit of 5.38 million gallons per day. The piece that's new is the second transaction, which would be a $6.8 million purchase by the city in 2027, or possibly 2028. And we'll talk about that in a minute. This transaction would increase the city's peak flow limit to 7 million gallons today. And with that higher limit, it includes similar constraints you've seen previously. Triggering a study at 95%, 3 exceedances in 12 months would stop new connections and trigger corrective action. So next slide, please. So quick recap of this is where the sewer system flow exits at the city. So we've got 3 connections at Sisler's, Tinner Hill, and Cedar Lane. And then the portions of the city in the different colors of green represent the parts of the city that are supported by Fairfax County. Next slide, please. And then as to where that flow goes, you can see the 3 exit points from the city, and then it traverses along Trips Run, past Lake Barcroft, into Alexandria, and eventually to the Alex Renew treatment plant. So next slide, please. So the county initiated a project in 2020 to address historical flooding issues along Trips Run near Barrett Road. So Barrett Road, if you've never been there before, is outside the city, just south of Arlington Boulevard along Annandale Road. During the design process with the county in early 2025, they identified the need to relocate the sanitary sewer main in the area, which so happens to be the main choke point that limits the amount of peak flow that they've been able to offer the city. So with that kind of relocation and upsizing, the county plans to upsize the pipe from 27 to 36 inches. And in doing so, that enables them to offer additional peak flow capacity to the city. The current cost estimate for that sanitary sewer portion of the overall stormwater project is $12 million. And since the city would own 50% of the capacity of the pipe, the city would contribute 50% of that project's cost. The update we got from Fairfax County on Friday is that the schedule slipped a little bit from what's on the slide. So the design is now slated to be complete by the end of 2026, and construction would begin in late 2027. This would shift out the city's payment, for this portion of the project as well. So we've talked about project risks for this. There are no unique project risks that have been identified by the county, and the $12 million estimate for the sewer portion of the project still holds. There's always possibilities of some unforeseen things coming up in the design or delays due to land acquisition, but at this point, both we and the county view it as a pretty straightforward project. Next slide, please. So there's two key changes since we talked to you last in March of 2025. We've talked a lot previously about the agreement limits being vulnerable to climate change related rainfall events. With Sally's help, Fairfax County has agreed to change the number of exceedances needed to trigger action from 2 to 3. This is a big deal. It means we would need a storm that generates more than 7 million gallons per day 3 times in a 12-month period to trigger action on the city. The new agreement's peak flow limit of 7 million gallons per day has only been exceeded in the city once in the foreseeable past, and that was during the 200-year storm event in the summer of 2019. The second change, which we've kind of alluded to already, is it eliminates the language for requiring a flow equalization basin. And this is replaced with the 2027 acquisition price that increases the peak flow limit to 7 million gallons per day. We would continue doing kind of incremental investments in the infrastructure here in the city that we've been doing for a number of years with main and manhole relining. By pivoting from the flow equalization basin to the Trips Run project contribution, we're currently estimating to save the city at $4 million in capital costs compared to what we've kind of presented to you all previously. Recognizing that the agreement set up where the Trips Run contribution is an estimate at this point, the cost of the flow equalization basin was an estimate as well. I think just as important and helpful for the city is pivoting to this approach does not carry the long-term operational liabilities for the city that a flow equalization basin would. Staffing, maintenance, routine cleaning, odor control, risk of equipment failure, we're back to, as Wyatt likes to say, we really like gravity as a solution to our sanitary sewer system. So, next slide, please. So, the agreement kind of purchase price summary. So the 2026 purchase price is exactly what you've seen before. We make this payment to the county this spring, and it covers the treatment plant costs for an additional 500,000 gallons of capacity and a contribution to Fairfax for the 1.08 million gallons per day in peak flow conveyance capacity through their system. The 2027 purchase price would include the $6 million, which is the 50% contribution to the Trips Run sewer relocation project, and then a contribution to Fairfax County for 1.6 million gallons per day in peak flow capacity throughout the conveyance system. So that covers the capacity and the length of the system from the city all the way to Alex Renew. Next slide, please. So we've shared a version of this table with you all before, and we kind of wanted to walk through kind of how we're tracking the anticipated capital costs for the system going forward. So the first one is the Fairfax County capacity purchase, the 2026 purchase price. This is $8.8 million we anticipate using availability fees to pay for. We have almost enough availability fees on hand to pay this one in cash. We may need to pull a small amount from the sanitary sewer fund to pay the balance, depending on some timing. The second item, the Trips Run sewer expansion, the 2027 purchase price we've been talking about of $6.8 million. We'll use a combination of availability fees, fund balance, and debt to pay for this. And the debt would be paid for by the growth in user base due to new development in the city, or expansion of new customers, if you will. The future capacity purchase that's out there in 2030, when we get to that point as a city, we would use availability fees that's paid by new development to pay that amount. Currently estimating that in FY 2030, but that's dependent on future development, that could come online in the city. And then the actual flows the city is experiencing due to recent growth. We've had to do a lot of projections on kind of how the new buildings are going to perform, and we'll learn some things, I think, here over the next couple of years. The next 3 items on the chart are all typical annual costs you all have seen in CIPs previously. So $750,000 what we spend kind of on an annual basis for annual sewer rehab work in the city limits. And then the next 2 lines are for the capital contributions we make each year to Arlington and Alex Renew. The numbers here reflect the latest information we've received. We'll note that actual expenses are typically less than the estimates we are given, and we consider the figures kind of laid out here as worst case. The final 2 items are anticipated additions to the next CIP, which you'll see in another couple of months. The estimates for these and the plans are still being reviewed, but to give you a preview, we're looking at the sanitary sewer master plan in FY 27, and then a potential upsizing of the downstream sewer main in Tinner Hill for around $1 million. Next slide, please. So we kind of tried to chart this out. This is a lot going on this chart, but to reflect some of the things I just talked through about the ways the city would anticipate paying for the items that we just kind of outlined for you all. Next slide, please. So future city actions. So we're currently reassessing the sanitary sewer strategy for the Quinn project. So I think if you all remember on this one, because of the limitations in Fairfax County, the plan we worked out with Quinn was to build a pump and then what they call a force main to send sewage from that part of the city over to Arlington County. In light of the sewer agreement changes that we've kind of sharing with you all tonight with Fairfax County, the team's working through a potential alternative to flow that project to Fairfax County rather than build the force main to Arlington. This would allow the city to collect the availability fees from the developer rather than have them make the investment in the new force main infrastructure. So the team's currently collecting field data on the system directly downstream of the Quinn site to rule out any potential issues, and we expect to make the decision on that project in mid-February. So the next thing we intend to do in the next year is initiate the sanitary sewer master plan. We've talked about this before as a critical tool for future planning of the city's sanitary sewer system, and you'll see more about that in the CIP in March. Plan for future capacity purchase, we talked about that already. It's currently reflected in FY 2030, but it's dependent on a lot of variables. And then we'll still need to do some work on I&I and look into kind of how we partner with private property owners, particularly in the Cedar Lane subshed of the city. Next slide, please. So in summary, the staff recommends approval of the capacity purchase agreement with Fairfax County at your January 26th meeting. We believe this is an agreement that meets the needs of both the city and the county, provides the city with the capacity to support ongoing and future growth in the city, comes at a reduced cost to the sanitary sewer fund from what we've previously planned, and avoids the operational risks with building and operating a flow equalization basin in the city. So with that, we're happy to take any questions you all have.
Great. Thank you for the update. It's definitely, you all had hinted that there was a positive development, so we appreciate getting the update and the good news about a cheaper solution. I'm sure council will want to dig in. Vice Mayor?
I won't dig in too much. I have to say, I never thought I'd be excited about a sanitary sewer master plan, but I am. I look forward to that. And this was a great presentation. Kudos to you on the slide. I thought it was really well done. So I just have one quick question. Yeah, and I echo the mayor's comment about, saving the city some money. It's terrific. That's really good news. And I was also gratified to see about, because I knew the piece about the, if we exceeded once or twice, so I was glad to see that bumped up to 3 times, and it hasn't, it's it's sort of not the occurrence, it's a 200-year flood. So, that just gave me some, okay, this would be sort of a rare thing for us to, I think, to hit it 3 times. My only question was with the Quinn project. So am I understanding that if additional capacity is needed, the developer does cover that cost? Is that right?
Additional capacity.
So if something, I guess maybe I misread the staff report, but so the developer does cover those costs with any sewer infrastructure that's needed?
So the way we manage kind of new developments in the city is they have to pay what are called availability fees for their sanitary sewer usage.
Okay.
And they're kind of calculated different based on the type of project or whatever, but the agreement that we've had with the Quinn folks was, because we can't send your stuff to Fairfax County, instead you all would take responsibility and build this infrastructure to send to Arlington. If we don't do that, then they would kind of fall into the normal kind of pay availability fees to the city under those calculations.
Okay.
So it's a big check. It's,
Right.
I think $1.7 million or something in that neighborhood. Now, we've kind of asked them to invest some time and energy developing a design for this other solution, and so we'll have to kind of work that out with them, and I anticipate we would have to give them a credit for that.
Okay. And then this other solution, Mr. Shields, this is the one that you were saying relies more on gravity versus a pump. Am I right? Remembering?
Entirely on gravity.
Okay. Which we like gravity in these situations. Okay. Thank you very much.
Go ahead.
Mr. Reagan.
So I have a couple questions. One of which is the 10.8 million. You showed us the timing of this new solution, and I'm glad we're coming in lower, but and the timing of the payment to Fairfax County is pretty quick. It's in 2027. The 10.8 for the flow equalization tank, what was the timing for that payout? So if I look at the chart.
So the $10.8 million wouldn't have been a payment to Fairfax County. That would have been a project that the city had to build, and the money was appropriated in the previous CIP. So
But what was the spread of that? Because it's our project, we wouldn't have been basically spending it all at once. We'd spend it over the course of the project.
where we were a couple years ago, like we should have been building it by now. So I think in light of kind of the change in direction, we've kind of not had to make that investment. But it would have been an expense. We would have be doing a contract for a flow equalization basin in the next year. The timelines wouldn't be appreciably different.
Okay. The other question, the second question I have is, again, on funding. Fairfax County, we're funding 50% of this sanitary sewer shift. Where's the other 50% coming from for Fairfax County, and is it part of a bigger project? And most importantly, how reliable are those funds? Because we've seen over the past year that grants that have been issued, there seems to be question marks about every grant nowadays. So
I haven't talked with Fairfax County staff specifically about where their $6 million is coming from. It is tied to this stormwater project, which they're getting money, I think, from the Department of Environmental Quality for the state of Virginia, that there's a lot of pressure to deliver on. And so I don't anticipate this is something that Fairfax County is going to like walk away from or not be able to pay for. My sense is they're using their capital program for the sanitary sewer system in Fairfax County, and $6 million is a huge deal for us. It's less so, I think, for them.
Okay, so they're less. So you're pretty confident in.
I'm very confident. Yes, sir.
And then the last question is, on that same funding chart in FY 2030, you have a large use of availability fees. What are your, and that's coming from other development, what are your assumptions about future development that will feed into the availability fees balance so that we would have that availability fees balance to spend in that year?
So I think the the numbers we collect for availability fees on projects, like like I mentioned, the Quinn number of 1.7 million, for the amount of treatment capacity they're actually using, it's a pretty big, healthy contribution. It's intended to help with other things as well in the program. We would only look at spending that $5.5 million or whatever it was at the time if we'd had a series of projects come on, being presented to the city that we would need to make that investment. And so if the development pipeline doesn't materialize to support the need for that purchase, we wouldn't make it. So does that help?
Yeah, so basically, the availability fee, the availability of the availability fees with less development would decrease, but so would the need for the payment. So they would move hopefully down together.
Or we may not need it at all, depending on kind of what happens in the city over the next 5 years.
So we wouldn't see like all of a sudden we'd have a giant debt issuance there. We're not looking at that.
It's not the kind of expenditure we would issue debt for.
Okay, those were my big ones on the lending.
Okay. Ms. Flynn?
So I just have a few, I guess, comments and questions. I agree and thank you. One of the main concerns I had, as you remember, at the Dogwood Room work session on this was sort of the risk to the city and non-compliance and sort of needing to iron out those terms in particular. So thank you. And thanks to the city attorney for sort of working through those issues to reduce our risk in terms of, pretty severe measures we could otherwise be facing based on original terms of this agreement. And I also agree that in terms of, options, having Fairfax kind of take on the expansion and are avoiding having to do the whole Cavalier Trail park, like disruption, build, remediation, and then long-term kind of maintenance and operation of that. Likely is a good solution and good development. I did have a question over, so is this for the expansion from like whatever it was, 27 to 36 inches? This is a one-time payment and we don't have sort of ongoing operational costs that we anticipate separate and apart from like the normal contributions that we need to make into the Arlington Now or Alexandria Now and Arlington Renew or whatever the two things are?
That's correct.
Okay. And the projections that you've made in terms of the purchase agreement is sort of where we were to get back to like the overage that we had, so to speak. So that like 8 point whatever million that we're making for the purchase agreement kind of gets us both within the capacity that we need and also projects out that additional like 0.25 or 0.5 or whatever it was. So you're comfortable and the team is comfortable with the overall like capacity that we have in the near term, even putting sort of the Quinn and the center city sort of triangle that you had originally accepted out all into the same sewer shed.
That's correct. So I think the primary concern the team had with the Quinn originally was the peak flow limitations when we were already we were already topped out, and then like the idea from a peak flow limitation to add something like Quinn, like just we didn't see how we could do that with the peak flow limit now not the major constraint. I think we're comfortable based on the recent kind of development coming online in the city that there's adequate treatment capacity to cover it. So what the team's looking at right now is just the kind of downstream infrastructure immediately in the city to make sure we've got a plan that we don't create some other problems with this change in the design.
And for future development then, or down the road capacity purchases that we would need, at that point in time, based on sort of discussions or negotiations with Fairfax, we would sort of have insight into whether this expansion project is working as they anticipated and is also enough capacity for them with whatever development they have between the point where we join Fairfax and the leg to get to the treatment plant or whatever, that piece of where do we stand with capacity and how much can Falls Church have, or what's in this overall like downstream pipe and what may be flowing into it we're creating problems upstream because of development downstream. All of that are costs that we could have transparency into or visibility into at the time we're like potentially negotiating further treatment based on development that we would be anticipating or approving.
At that time, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I think, with the peak flow limitations we've got here and the type of new development that would come online in the city, dense development, not a lot of kind of strung out infrastructure where you have inflow and infiltration problems, like adding additional treatment capacity to this deal and sticking with the peak flow limits that are here should be possible.
Okay. And then my, I guess, final reaction, since it sort of came up just in a passing remark, is that on the Quinn project, and I know sort of, working with people and trying to recognize their kind of sunk costs into something that is going to be a different solution based on where we stand today than at the time that they came in and do their approval. My reaction to that is still the developer took on that risk at the point in which they were here seeking the entitlement in order to get council approval because they wanted, that approval, have been able to go through the site plan process, have been able to potentially move along with their development. And so I remember, frankly, an exchange, right, with the attorney about who is absorbing risk for kind of this sewer project overall, and is it the city in any sort of way, or is it solely the developer? And so my immediate reaction to that, without giving it much more thought or seeing what the numbers are like, is that I actually don't think they should be getting a credit against the sewer availability fees when it comes to paying them.
So the only thing I would say, there was risk in that the developer had to pay for costs above what their normal availability fees would be. But the agreement that we did have with them was that they would be compensated through a credit from their availability for costs incurred for the force main. So given the fact that they have incurred costs for the force main, I think the spirit of the agreement was that they would get a credit out of their availability fees for that work. So I think that was the agreement.
All right, well, I would like to just understand what the numbers look like and get transparency into that, and for us to kind of look at those VCs or to have insight into it before there's any sort of administrative decision to the credit on that, just to understand.
Understood.
Mr. Snyder?
Thank you. I think the architecture of this agreement is far better than what we had seen before with that tank and then that additional line that would cut across most of the city. But I want to focus on slide 10 because I'm trying to understand it. That's the one on financing. That one. So FY 2026, we're in FY 2026 now, and am I reading it right that there's a $12 million obligation, 12 something, and availability fees are supposed to cover most of that? Are those fees basically in the bank? They're developments that we have in place or that are in planning?
So we have a balance of, I won't get the number exactly right, but I think we have a balance of around $8.7 million in availability fees.
Okay,
already.
That's helpful to know. And then the PAYGO is what? What does that come out of? Has that been funded in this fiscal year's budget?
So the PAYGO's funded by kind of fees we collect this year. So we pay it as we go.
I'm sorry, funded how?
So it pays out of the user fees we collect for the sewer system.
Okay, so that portion is pretty much paid for. Now, the fund balance contribution, how much is that in 2026? Is that, what, 2-point-something million? Am I reading that right?
3 million thereabouts. I don't know the number off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you go
Okay.
back to the previous slide
Yeah,
for me, Tam. So if you add, so the $12.8 million, so the Fairfax County purchase is being paid by availability fees, give or take, $100,000. And then the other three items are three items that we typically, pay every year, right? And so what the chart on the next slide shows is that we're using a combination of fees we collect this year and then fund balance that we have from in the sanitary sewer program.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that we've budgeted for this and we expect this to occur. What will that leave the fund balance after we take the 2-point-something or other out of it?
We'll have to get back to you kind of on some of those details. I don't have those with me tonight.
Yeah. So FY 2027, so let's look at that for a minute. So we're not assuming a lot of first of all, is the 12 million in FY 2027 in addition to the 12 million in FY 2026, and that's 24 million as opposed to what I thought this project was costing, which was 15.6.
But this is the overall sanitary sewer capital plan. So this includes the annual contributions we make to Arlington and Alex Renew on an ongoing basis. So, I can't do the one. I can usually do quick math,
So
but
the financing number then is not just new, it's existing, sort of current.
I think we were trying to kind of show kind of all in, kind of what's happening.
So it's really helpful for people to, there's more explanation that I think would be useful in chart 10 so that people can really understand what it's saying. And then the debt amount is, what's the total debt that we're going to have to incur to do the additional work that we're talking about? And I assume that that's not the typical amounts of money we're paying, that this is debt financing for the capital elements here. Otherwise, you couldn't use debt financing. So between now and FY 2029, what is the debt that we would incur to basically execute on the 15.6 million expansion and capital?
So it would only be the portion that's showed on this chart in FY 27. And so I think some of it's dependent on kind of what our balances and things will be kind of at the time we need to make the transaction. We've estimated we'll collect availability fees from the Quinn project, for example, that would contribute to this, and we would have some available fund balance to pay for part of it, and then the rest of it would be debt. Again, we can come back to you with some more specific numbers. I don't have that number off the top of my head.
So, and then there's as you mentioned, another fund balance hit in 2027, but I'm interested in the yellow, because that's pretty big in 2027, and I guess FY 2028 is additive. So what's the total debt that we're talking about issuing in order to do the work that we're talking about tonight?
Okay, we'll have to get back to you with the number.
Pardon?
I don't know the number off the top of my head.
That would be helpful to know as well. I'm just trying to figure out what this chart really means and how we're going to finance all this. Again, I think the basic framework is much improved, but I'm trying to figure out how this is going to be paid for, and you know, a question of how much of this is cost that has not been paid by the development, instead is now being carried by the general taxpayers, which would be the debt primarily. So that's why I'm interested in what the debt number is.
And so the summary is the same as was presented about a year ago. It's just that now the numbers are smaller. But, so availability fees.
I'm sorry, were we at 15.6 million a year ago?
Yeah, the $6.8 million for the Barrett Road project, that used to be 11 million. We had a range for like 10 to 13 million for the vault. So now that's 6.8. That's what I mean by the numbers now smaller. So the purchase is the same as it was. So that's the 8.7. That's going to be paid for out of availability fees. The debt is for the Barrett Road project. And so that debt service will be paid for out of normal fees that everybody pays. Because our rate base is growing, what the average ratepayer will experience, however, is just a normal inflationary increase. They will not see a special increase to pay for this Barrett Road project. And that's the basic construct that we presented a year ago, and we've refined those numbers since then, and the lift is smaller than it was a year ago.
So I go back to my request for a total amount for the debt financing to do this. And those are fundamentally my questions tonight, which is to better understand who pays, and how it's paid for, and over what time period. And Chart 10 is helpful, but without the numbers, well, with the numbers, it could be more helpful. Again, what is the debt financing, et cetera? Okay.
So we can bring that back on the 26th, I think, and maybe kind of focus on the costs associated with this transaction rather than kind of muddy in the water with kind of the overall program over time.
And I guess one other question. This is a fairly major project. If you total the two, it's 15.6 million, I think. Give me a reason why we're moving so fast. And I know we've had lots of discussions about this, but we're moving pretty fast on a major expenditure, including debt financing, if this is going to be on the agenda. So give me a reason why we're moving that fast.
So I feel like this has been my career project at the city. So if any, there's probably no universe that I think it's moved very fast, but I can understand your perspective. So I think both us and the county are eager to get an agreement in place that kind of supports what we anticipate the future use to be. The availability fee payment, is associated with signing the agreement, right? And we've collected the money from development to pay for that, and so I think paying for that's pretty straightforward. The second piece of this that we've talked about being an FY27, but I think based on the update we got on Friday from the county is probably going to be an FY28. That's a couple of years off, and I think from a council perspective, any debt issuance will have to come back to you for authorization at the time that needs to be done. And so by signing the agreement, you're not kind of authorizing us to issue debt, right? I believe like we've got to come back for that when that time is appropriate. And that's going to be a couple years from now. So I don't know if that context helps answer your question.
Again, I want to accomplish this too, and I want to thank you for incredibly good work here. But I think some additional numbers would be helpful to understand that chart and how we're really paying for this and who's really paying for it.
We can do that.
Can I ask a quick question on a follow-up to that? Because it was something that crossed my mind when you were speaking, and, overall, I still do think that the way that the costs of the sewer project could increase would be similar to the costs that we would incur to like build a basin, because the costs we looked at were the costs last year and they're not the cost this year or next year, and then we have the operational and maintenance costs and whatever else, and so we're kind of treating a like 10.3 or 11 or 13 or whatever it was as a static number, while we're looking at like the 6 million as a dynamic number because of the 12, like half of the 12 million. But is there any way, or have you in any way like discussed, is there a way to cap like what our contribution could be, since we're 50%, but like we're like a minuscule relative to Fairfax, like size and budget wise. So a $2 million overrun doesn't seem that huge to them, but it has much bigger cost implications and budget implications for us. And so in terms of like, I know you don't want to necessarily like build in a overrun, and then it gives them flexibility for the costs to increase, but at the same time, if we think that it's likely the costs are going to increase, is there a way to kind of put a cap to incentivize their moving forward on this and sort of prioritizing the project so that they're not the ones out the money, and you know, it's a 55-45 split as opposed to a 50-50 split?
So we have, talked about this, I think kind of over the months, both kind of internally and with Fairfax County. Like, this is what they've kind of insisted on. I will say, like, since the summer, we went through a successive series of conversation over months, and the number got smaller every single time we talked to them. And so with the way this structure's set up now, it kind of works both ways, right? Like, the current estimate's 6. We get to FY28, it might come back and say it's only 5. So I think there's kind of the possibility for the number to move in both directions, and kind of what Fairfax County's kind of laid out for us is we're going to incur the actual costs of the project, and then we'll come back to you kind of with a bill essentially at the end with what that is. So
I'm just saying it's like 12, but it could come in at like 19, right? And we're on the hook for like 50% of 19 if this doesn't get built to like fiscal year, I don't even know where we are, like 29 or something like that. So you get the point. I just wanted to raise it.
Understood.
Thanks.
Other questions and comments this side of the room? I'm gonna go there first because we already had a turn.
Sure. I will go quickly. A lot of my questions have been answered. I was just curious, I think this was in the staff report on 128. It showed it was the new average daily flow, and then the 2026 maximum peak flow, and then the 2027. From my memory before, it's Sizzlers. That's really that's what we've been discussing here. But in terms of Cedar Lane and Tinner Hill, those new average daily flows and the 2026 maximum peak flow and the 2027 maximum peak flow, those are well within the ranges that we expect to be able to meet. Like, those are not as problematic sheds as Sizzlers.
So I think we have, and we've shared this previously, we have some work to do on peak flow out of Cedar Lane.
Mm-hmm.
Taya, can you do me a favor and go to slide, I think something like 5, but one of those maps that I had. So,
there's an attachment that has a map too.
So let's see, what's the best way to, can you go back one more for me?
Oh, yeah. Page 4.
Okay, so, there we go. So the lower left, or the lower right-hand corner in the light green is the Cedar Lane subshed. And so that's kind of the neighborhoods around and kind of south into Fairfax County, coincidentally, of like Hillwood.
Mm-hmm.
And that part of the city. It's a residential area. We're not anticipating needing to support future growth. And
Okay.
so I think our efforts kind of, over the next couple of years are going to be to continue to work on, meeting those peak flow kind of limitations in Cedar Lane, right? And there's some work we need to do, and the team has been doing.
And is that covered by the 750,000?
Yes, that's the
contributions?
money we've
Okay.
been investing in there, exactly. On Tinner Hill, so Tinner Hill's the middle section, and, you know, and there are limits kind of on the section that kind of exits the city and goes into the county, right? And so one of the things Reza's been working on is evaluating that. That's one of the things on the table, one of those new projects at the end we listed as kind of doing a relatively small project to address the capacity along that kind of limited stretch of pipe, right? And so that might allow us to kind of spread out the 7 million gallons a little differently and support some development in that part of the city. But we're anticipating most of the flow. What the team's been working on with the Quinn team is to send Quinn down through the Sisslers connection to be able to use the available capacity that's there.
Okay, so in terms of the agreements that we have in place for the other two sheds, so the Tinner Hill and Cedar Lane, we feel fairly confident that we can meet those requirements, or the caps that are being put on us for that.
We have some work to do, but yes.
Okay.
Was that it? Yeah. Mary Beth?
Just quickly, I appreciate all the questions that others have asked, and mine is just, is there a way as we talk about all of this to think about the effects of new construction or mixed-use construction or increased capacity because of larger buildings, which we have heard over time is often doesn't have inflow and infiltration problems, and then the inflow and infiltration problems that are there because of homes built in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. Is there a way to bifurcate that at all, to be able to really show the difference as we go forward and think about big projects, or is that just something that it's like, these are the pipes and this is what goes in the pipes or not in the pipes, and it's hard to measure that? I just think it's like, it's the same things that we struggle with all the time, right? Like older neighborhoods, newer neighborhoods, or older neighborhoods that don't have as good sidewalks as newer neighborhoods where that work is done when larger mixed-use buildings go in. So I'm just wondering if there's a way to, as we think about the expenses going forward, how do we think about that?
I think it's a really, really good idea. I think it's a really good discussion for us to come back to when we talk about the sanitary sewer master plan, because I think that can help with that. But it's also complicated.
It is
There's a lot of
complicated.
variables
Yeah.
kind of going on. There's the weather, there's,
right.
new fixtures and new buildings are more efficient than old ones. It's, it's a complicated.
Right, it's a complicated problem anyway, so that's my one question. And my second question is just, has the Public Utilities Commission been involved in this at all? We have the Public Utilities Commission, and when we interviewed someone recently on an exit interview, they said, we'd like to be involved in this kind of stuff. Should they be involved in this? I can tell you, you're going to say no.
Good evening, everyone, Mayor Hardy and council members. So actually, I was in one of the sessions with the Utility Commission, and one of the discussion that was brought up during the meeting was about the ways that we can just work with the owners, with the homeowners, to identify the sewer laterals that might contribute toward the I&I, because based on the investigation that already done, it seems a good amount of the I&I that we are receiving within the city is from the private portion, and some of them is because of the illicit connection, and some of them is because in the past they were not really illegal and they connected the downspout, the sump pump, and all other the storm water related things to the sanitary sewer. So one of the discussion was finding some ways to tackle those kind of the issues or concern that we have regarding the sewer lateral. So I think the upcoming session is going to be on 28th of January, and we are, I think, discussing more on those approaches that we can just work with the homeowners.
That's great, thank you. I think that's a good job for the Public Utilities Commission.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks. And then my just last comment on this one is, it seems like every 5 years or so, we get a huge project in front of us that it just seems so daunting, and how are we going to do this? And then through the work of staff and through collaboration and through lots of talk and presentations, it gets better. So that has happened several times, and I really appreciate the work. And as you said, Mr. Young, this is like your capstone project, right? The work that all of you have put into it to make it better than it was a year ago and better than it was a year before that. So thank you.
Before I get to Art, I wanted to go back to your question or your idea about like how to bifurcate this and figure out like how much is new. And so staff can tell me whether this is the correct way of thinking about it, but like developer paid availability fees is paying for increased capacity purchase. So when you have new units of housing, they pay new availability fees. That is now paying for the new capacity purchase that we're planning in FY26. That's new stuff. The peak flow issue we had, which is what, so Fairfax County says, yes, we'll sell you, but you got to resolve peak flow. Peak flow comes from I&I. So I think we'd seen the map where we mapped out when the peak flows happen. It's usually with big rain events. That's why we had to have the tank under Cavalier Trail. Now, instead of the tank, we're going to make a pipe bigger. And so peak flow / I&I is from existing neighborhoods. And so that now $6 million cost instead of the $11 million tank is because of legacy neighborhoods and older I&I issues. So in terms of that bifurcation, that's how I've tried to keep it straight in my head. Like the capacity purchase is for new stuff, and that is paid by developer availability fees. The existing legacy I&I issue we have is being paid by everybody, somewhat through debt, because it's a legacy issue across the city. Is that a fair way to kind of keep it straight in our heads?
I think so.
Okay. Art, you had another question?
Well, I did, but what you just said actually clarified it, so thank you. The concern I had was whether the new development on the Fairfax side, because a lot of upstream from the choke point is still in Fairfax, like the Stony mixed use, but from what you just said, that's really not going to impact the peak flow issue because that is a new development. It's not going to add to the I&I problem. It's more of a capacity issue. So thank you, because I think you basically clarified it for me.
I did have more findings and questions like Dave did. So if we can go to first slide 9, maybe a suggestion that would be helpful in terms of looking at the numbers. I think slide 9 was the one that had the chart with the numbers. So if I understand this correctly, rows 4, 5, and 6 is stuff we'd have to pay for regardless of whether we're talking about this. Is that correct?
Correct.
So maybe we'd like color code them and say like, regardless of whether we're talking about buying new capacity or solving the peak flow issue, we're gonna have those numbers because we hadn't seen those before, I think, because that's why I think the annual cost looks so much bigger than the $8 million capacity purchase or the new $6 million pipe expansion that we're doing. So that might be a helpful way to show it. I think I heard you just mention that there's a chance we may not do the larger pipe until FY28, is that correct?
That's correct. So the update I got from Fairfax County staff on Friday, they had a busy week getting back from the holidays like we did, was that the design has been delayed. Originally, it was going to be completed in the summer of 26. Now they're saying the end of 26. And they don't anticipate construction beginning until late in 2027, which means the project wouldn't finish until sometime in 2028. So that's when they would be then coming to the city for our portion.
Got it. So could we go to the next slide then, where we show what sort of money we're using to pay for all of it? So if I understand this correctly, we've accrued a lot of availability fees from the development we've had. We're using that to pay this year for the $8 million capacity purchase. We start running out of that next year, and so the plan was we're going to take out debt to pay for this expanded pipe project.
At least a portion of it, correct.
And then because we have nothing else in the development pipeline, realistically, we're probably not going to have a whole bunch of availability fees accrue, and so FY28, FY29 is largely pay-go and debt. Is that Am I understanding that correctly?
That's correct.
Okay.
And those expenditures in 28 and 29 are those annual kind of ongoing costs that we always need to incur.
And do we normally take out debt for that as well, or do we normally?
I think it depends on the year. So it's a part of the trick of projecting these, you know, when I mentioned earlier, we get planning numbers from both Arlington and Alex Renew every year for their systems. And inevitably what happens is what they actually come back to bill us for those years is always less. So I think in the staff report, Melissa, help me, we referenced, let's see.
It doesn't matter. I think I was just trying to understand that, you know, we weren't going to have more availability fees because we don't have a bunch of new development waiting in the pipeline other than the Quinn one. Right.
And at least for this exercise, we weren't trying to predict that.
Okay. And then the other assumption I think it's here is that in FY30, we think we're going to accrue enough availability fees again so that we can use that towards the next capacity purchase?
So the way the chart's set up is to show expenditures. So if we collected availability fees in 28, 29, and 30, we don't anticipate spending them until we would need to make that capacity purchase. That's the way the chart's set up.
Yeah, and so that's my follow-up question is, in the agreement with Fairfax County, is this FY30 purchase agreement kind of baked in? Like,
It is not.
We're not going to have to renegotiate again whether they're going to sell us new capacity?
It is not included in this
So
agreement.
it's not included. So we think we might need it again in FY30, but we'll need to talk to them some more.
Yes.
Okay. And I think someone had a question earlier about, I mean, I think the general point is, it feels like we should, maybe this is a sewer master plan, marry up likely growth with the capacity planning and then the planned expenditures with it. And then
That's
again,
exactly
depending on.
part of the plan of why we would do that. That is part of the sanitary sewer master plan.
Got it.
To help us map that out specifically.
Okay. I agree with my colleagues that the kind of the new solution we have is better, especially not having the long-term maintenance agreement. And obviously the triggers being more flexible is good. I think I read in the staff report that the scenarios are unlikely to happen, but have we modeled out those triggers and the, you know, how likely, because I think it's a 200-year storm where we might trigger one of them, but do we feel pretty good that the agreement as it stands means we're not likely going to hit them?
We do. We feel good.
Like, unlike, I guess, is it with rain events, there's like a 200-year rain events, like what sort of equivalent should we get assurance that that these negotiated, because they're, you know, they're not great, right? We can't do any new hookups if any of these happen. Like, what is the likelihood? Or is that even like a fair way of asking that question?
I mean, probabilistically, you know, let's say a 1% probability rain event happening 3 times in 1 year, there is a mathematical answer to that question, and it's a low probability. But I do want to just affirm the city does take I&I seriously. I believe, have invested more on a per capita basis on I&I prevention than other peer jurisdictions in Northern Virginia because we take it seriously. It's one of the most important environmental issues that is in our direct control. When there is surcharges either at the treatment plant or at a manhole, that causes huge amounts of nutrients to get into the right waterways and then ultimately into the Chesapeake Bay where it does a lot of damage. And so we have always taken it seriously, and so we are committed to it. And I think we're going to make real progress in that Cedar Run area where it's probably our, you know, kind of that part is our biggest problem with surcharges. And I think the things we're doing right now are going to make a material difference.
Got it.
The harder things that Mr. Ravindus was talking about, getting after the private laterals, that's a big public policy question, which is why it is appropriate for the PUC to sort of work with staff on a really difficult question like that impacts homeowners. That's a tougher question. Almost no one has addressed it that we're aware of, and so if we do address it, we'll be a leader. But it's a real point of sensitivity for homeowners, in particular, you know, some people are on fixed incomes, and how to address those private laterals is a real sensitive point, which is why others have not figured out a way to address it yet.
But if again-
You know, with the single-family homeowner redevelopment, that is an opportunity that I think we could seize a bit more aggressively than we do currently to make sure that these things are addressed.
But again, if we're spending $6 million to solve kind of peak flow I&I issues, like it feels like we should try to solve it at the root as well, rather than just expand the pipes, right?
Yeah.
So going back to the Quinn project, and again, the conversation about like marrying up likely growth with capacity planning and then expenses, even though we prefer gravity and not needing to do the force main and the pump station, does it provide us more flexibility by having that, because it sends things to Arlington and therefore allows us to have this reserve capacity with Fairfax County where there is likely growth? And specifically, I mean like Gordon Road, right? That's going to be in that corridor where we're going to have maybe the next big development in the city. And so even though we really like Gravity Solutions, if we already have started the process for force main, I just don't want to back ourselves into a corner when we could have had a force main option that doesn't have forced us to renegotiate an FY30 purchase agreement with Fairfax County, knowing that we're going to have Gordon Road potentially as an opportunity for us. So not something that you need to answer now, but that's kind of, I feel like that should be factored into the Quinn conversation, other than just saying, we really like force main, we really like gravity as a solution, and maybe you don't need to build it.
Understood. Yeah, we've discussed that.
And then the last thing, which I feel like I raised before, and maybe this merits the PUC discussion, is the how we charge availability fees and DFUs. So I think we have this hybrid model where we just charge a flat fee. I pulled up our sewer budget ordinance. We charge $10,000 for a single-family home, $8,000 for an apartment or condo unit, $2,500 for a motel, and then for commercial, we do it for DFUs. We charge $500 per sink, toilet, whatever. Obviously, a 6-bedroom house is very different than a 1-bedroom condo, right? And so that doesn't feel fair that essentially 1-bedroom condo is paying $8,000 for that fee versus a 6-bedroom house, which presumably has 8 toilets and sinks and whatever, compared to the much smaller one. So I guess I would like to understand, in the spirit of making sure that we are fair and equitable and transparent, like making sure that where there is cost for new sewage and new hookups, that it's also translated in the fees. I want to say other jurisdictions strictly use DFUs. So if you are a really large home with lots of toilets and sinks, then you pay for a lot more versus your small unit. And so I think that's something I've raised in the past, and it's probably a larger undertaking. But as we think about, again, the sewer master plan and making sure we are thoughtful about how we pay for things, that feels like an opportunity for us. It just doesn't seem very fair when I looked at the actual cost. So.
Understood.
Okay. Dave?
Thank you. Unsurprisingly, I have a little different view than the mayor does on this. So let me try to explain. So when your demand level was significantly raised, then the I&I, which by the way has never been quantified as far as I know, then it's very easy for a minuscule amount of I&I to trigger going over the level, because you've already established a very high level of usage. And the event happens, and even a little bit of I&I will trigger. So it's not correct to blame the overage on I&I, which again, by the way, has never been, as far as I know, calculated. And I think there have been smoke tests done around the city. Weren't they done for purposes of determining the laterals? And what have they shown so far? Do we know?
Yeah, so we've done a lot of that, and finding the exact locations of the I&I is just a huge effort. It's a big science associated with it, and it's very expensive to do. When we have done it in the past, it has been effective. What it doesn't get at is sump pumps, and we think probably a lot of it is coming from sump pumps. On the larger point, I will, Mr. Ravandus was sharing some of the data, and we can schedule time to show it to the city council as well. But what is striking about our consumption, or what's metered going through the city's sanitary pipes to Fairfax County, is that a rainy year has a more significant impact on our annual flows than 20 years of mixed-use development. And it's quite stark to see it. So the I&I issue it's a real public policy issue. And I think that's kind of what this whole discussion has been about.
I guess my view is the I&I is used more for political purposes since it's never been quantified.
We can quantify
blame the need. The reality is that we need more capacity because we've built more stuff here and more people live here.
So certainly there's more demand. There's no question about that, and that's quantifiable. But the I&I is quantifiable, and it is a serious public policy issue. And that's why we've been talking about it here with Fairfax County for 2 years.
Yeah. Again, I don't agree with that interpretation. I have a different one, but anyway, thanks for that.
I think we would appreciate the data, Wyatt, so if you can share that, I think we'd like to see the numbers too. Thank you. Any final questions or comments? Andy, thank you very much for the work on this. I know it's been a long time that you've been grinding at this, so we appreciate the progress that's been made and the positive development. Okay, I think that was the last item on our work session agenda. Is that right, Wyatt?
It is.
Okay. Given that it's 20 to 11, I'm guessing we do not want to go through schedule, but is there any other business not on the agenda?
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
I just wanted to report that the 250 committee has submitted a letter to City Council outlining the expenditures that was requested by City Council in terms of the allocation for the 250 recognition here in the City of Falls Church. So you all should be getting a letter, and I know that the group would appreciate any comments you have on it. But we've already started to do, as you know, started to do some of the videotaping, some of the segments.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, but I heard it was live today. A suggestion I had made to the committee is, given how much we care about trees, tree planting is always a nice way to commemorate a big anniversary. So if it fits within the budget, I wonder if we could be ambitious and plant 250 trees around the city and have kind of one official tree and then find volunteers to do 249 ones elsewhere. So I made that suggestion to Jim Coyle last week.
Thank you.
I like the idea, and I suggested to the chair that he work with VIPAS, because VIPAS has done this street tree program, and they can tell you what the costs are, how you get the little trees to plant, and what it really takes. It may take a lot of people, but, it'd be a great volunteer effort. So anyway, your idea is being pursued.
Great.
It's also on my radar for Urban Forestry Commission.
Yep.
Wednesday night or whatever that is, next Wednesday night.
That's the sort of thing that we can get people out to plant trees.
Also, just a scheduling matter, I don't know if Mr. Shields, if you were raising this or if it makes sense for me to raise this, but we were talking about possibly moving the February 20th Budget and Finance meeting to the 27th, so I just wanted to have that on everyone's radar pending our confirming with the schools their availability for the date change. And so the committee was all available. It's because I'm in a different time zone at a conference that week now, so.
Okay.
Thanks.
I guess we'll save other scheduling things, but one thing I noticed on the day of service, which is, we're doing it early this Thursday, so I think we had discussions that we would prefer kind of an abbreviated version because of people's work schedules, and then I saw that Jenny was still sending out for a 3-hour block, which will be challenging for people who have to get to work.
So we'll follow. I know that message was received and communicated to the Winter Hill folks. I think that abbreviated is what they're anticipating, but I'll get back with you to confirm that.
And Jenny did talk to me briefly about it today and said that that's just the block of time that the food bank's going to be there. So there'll be opportunity to basically come and go to the event to help out. But it's based on when the food trucks are coming, I believe. So, but I'll have her send that.
There was a presentation, like 9
sounds
to
like that's-
11 and distribution 11.
Presentation is 9 to 10.
9 to, okay.
We'll tighten it up.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
But so now, in terms of people's availability, is it more people are available early, on the early side of that block, or that's probably email where this was communicated, and I'm just...
I think people just preferred kind of a shorter window, like 9 to 10:30. So
I
presentation
think the
from 9 to
trucks are
9:30.
anticipated to come between 9 and 10, from what I understood. So like Wyatt said, maybe we should tighten up
Yeah, so
exactly what that's
like a
happening.
quick 20-minute presentation, and then just put us to work when the truck gets there.
Yeah, that sounds correct.
I feel like that's what the plan is.
I just saw a message saying, giving us a 3-hour schedule instead of a 1-hour presentation and then 2 hours of work, and I think said, so anyway, let's just, since it's Thursday, I just want to make sure we were clear on it. Just let us know when to show up and put us to work. Ideally, more work than pomp and presentation. Okay. Any other final things?
Is there no mayor's meeting this week? Because we have no meeting next week? Or do we have a?
With our tradition, we don't have a mayor's
So we
meeting.
won't have a mayor's meeting.
Are there other scheduling things to talk about then, I guess, if we don't have them? Other than budget and finance in February. Celeste, you got back to COG. Dave, are you okay with the COG DMV Moves presentation on February 9th? They've been asking about coming.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And they would like us to probably adopt a resolution in support of it.
Yeah.
So if that timing works with when the region.
I think so, and it's in our legislative program to support it, so we've already made a commitment through the legislative program. But Cindy, yeah, I mean, the more people know about it, the better.
I think no later than February 9th, because that's directly tied to the SJ 28 General Assembly funding of WMATA. And crossover's February 14th. So if there was anything that council wanted to do after the 9th, tied to the General Assembly, I wouldn't go any later than crossover. But to Mr. Schneider's point, you've already formally adopted in your legislative program resolution.
Okay. Well, let's plan on February 9th if that works for COG as well.
I'm in contact with them.
Okay. So sounds like no more scheduling things. We'll cancel Wednesday, 8:30 as well. Great. So we did do the meeting. Okay, if nothing else, I think we're adjourned.
We have minutes.
Oh, we have minutes. Darn it.
I did review them. I'll move approval of the minutes.
Is there a second?
I had one, sorry. When I looked at them, I had one edit, and I think it was in the council requests, and maybe Mr. Shields' response, I don't have them up now, but in the part that said Mr. Shields' response to me, and I think there was a paragraph describing like drivers should be on more lookout of drivers rolling into the intersection or something like that. Like drivers needed to be on the lookout of drivers, and I think it meant drivers need to be on the lookout for pedestrians.
Oh, okay. We can fix that.
You see where it is?
I'll find it, yeah.
Okay.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, but otherwise I'm okay with it.
Okay.
So is there a second?
Second with the amendment.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any noes or abstentions?
Because I wasn't there.
Abstention by Egan.
Thank
Otherwise
you.
adopted. Great. Thank you all.
Thank you, staff, for staying late.
Good night, all.
Good night.